Standing in Denver International Airport, I stared at my phone with trembling fingers. 3 weeks ago, I'd flown to Germany to bury Marcus, my husband of 8 years, after a sudden heart attack at 34. Now exhausted and grief-stricken, I typed into our family group chat, "Flight lands at 5 p.m. Can someone pick me up?" The response came instantly from my brother Jake. "We're busy. Try Uber." Mom added, "Why didn't you plan better?" I typed back, "No worries," and turned off my phone, feeling utterly alone. The baggage carousel circled endlessly as I waited for my lone suitcase, my mind drifting back to 2 days ago in Frankfurt. The mahogany conference table had gleamed under fluorescent lights as Herr Zimmerman, Marcus's family lawyer, spread documents before me with practiced precision. "Frau Morrison," he'd said in accented English, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "your husband's grandfather passed away 6 months ago, leaving the entire Steinberg shipping enterprise to Marcus as the sole heir. Marcus never mentioned this." I shook my head numbly. Marcus had always been private about his German family, mentioning only that they'd had a falling out when he moved to America. We lived modestly in our Denver suburb, both working regular jobs, saving carefully for the future we'd never have. The company valuation stands at 12 million euros, approximately $13 million. Herr Zimmerman continued sliding papers across the table. Additionally, there is a life insurance policy Marcus purchased 3 years ago, naming you as sole beneficiary for $5 million. My coffee cup rattled against its saucer. $18 million. While I'd been planning Marcus's funeral with a $10,000 budget, worried about covering costs, I'd been sitting on a fortune I never knew existed. "There's more," the lawyer added gently, perhaps recognizing my shock. "We found regular transfers from Marcus's private account to a property in Colorado. The mortgage payments for a house owned by..." He consulted his notes. "David and Patricia Morrison. Your parents..." My throat constricted. For 3 years, my parents had bragged about Jake's success, how their golden boy helped them save their house from foreclosure. Every family dinner included toasts to Jake's generosity, while Marcus sat quietly beside me, smiling into his beer. $78,000 in total, Herr Zimmerman confirmed. Always transferred through intermediary accounts to remain anonymous. Your husband was quite insistent about the discretion. The baggage carousel jerked to life, breaking my reverie. My black suitcase appeared the same one Marcus had helped me pack for what was supposed to be our anniversary trip to Munich. Instead, I'd used it to carry a black dress and funeral documents. Grabbing the handle, I wheeled it through the terminal, past families reuniting with joy I could no longer feel. The automatic doors opened to Denver's crisp February air, where the taxi line stretched endlessly. As I joined the queue, my phone buzzed with a notification I'd missed while it was off. Emma, my younger sister, had posted on Instagram, "Family dinner tonight. Jake's treating us to celebrate his new charity milestone. Love having a brother who gives back." The photo showed my parents, Jake and Emma, at Romano's, the Italian place that required reservations weeks in advance. Mom wore the pearl necklace I'd given her last Christmas. Dad raised a glass of wine. Jake's arm draped around his girlfriend Melissa, his Rolex catching the light. They hadn't just declined to pick me up, they'd forgotten I existed entirely. A taxi pulled forward and the driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, helped with my suitcase. Where to miss? I almost gave my apartment address, then hesitated. Home meant an empty bed, Marcus's coffee mug still in the dishwasher, his reading glasses on the nightstand. "Actually," I said, climbing in, "could you wait a moment? I need to check something." Scrolling through my phone, I found the family group chat, then noticed something odd. A second thread appeared in my messages, one I hadn't seen before: family planning. My name was included, but clearly by accident. The messages loaded, dated from this morning. Jake: "So we're all agreed list Grandma's house while Susanna's gone." Emma: "She's too emotional to think clearly right now. We're doing her a favor." Mom: "The market's perfect. That old place could fetch $2 million easily." Dad: "Jake's already called his realtor friend. We can have it sold before Susanna even processes her grief. Emma. Honestly, she won't even notice. Too wrapped up in her drama. Jake, money will be split 4 ways. We all need it more than she needs sentiment. Mom, meeting's at 6 tonight at the house. Bring the spare keys. My grandmother's house. The Victorian in Cherry Creek she'd left specifically to me when she passed 5 years ago. The house where I'd spent every summer learning to bake in her kitchen, reading in her garden. The house my parents had offered to maintain while I was too young to handle such responsibility. My hands trembled as rage replaced grief. While I was burying my husband, they were planning to steal my inheritance. Miss. The driver looked concerned. You all right? Change of plans. I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Take me to 17th Street downtown, the law offices of Coleman and Associates. As we pulled away from the airport, I typed a single message to Sarah Coleman, my college roommate turned estate attorney. Emergency. They're trying to sell Grandma's house. Can you see me today? Her response came instantly. Office in 20 minutes. Bring everything. I leaned back in the taxi, watching Denver's skyline approach. My family had chosen the wrong moment to reveal their true colors. They'd mistaken my grief for weakness, my silence for compliance. Marcus's ring caught the afternoon sun throwing tiny rainbows across the taxi's worn interior. He'd always said the stone reminded him of my strength, how I could take something rough and transform it into something beautiful. I'm sorry, love, I whispered, touching the ring. Looks like that quiet life we planned will have to wait a little longer. The driver merged onto Interstate 70 while behind us the mountains stood witness to my transformation. The grieving widow who'd boarded in Frankfurt was gone. In her place sat a woman with $18 million and nothing left to lose. My phone buzzed again. Jake in the main chat. Hope your flight was good, sis. Let us know when you're settled. The performance of caring posted where others could see. I wondered how long they'd been pretending these people I'd called family. How many dinners had I sat through, listening to their false gratitude for Jake's help, while Marcus quietly paid their bills? How many times had they smiled to my face while planning to rob me blind? Denver's downtown towers grew larger, steel and glass reaching toward a cloudless sky. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Sarah waited with legal weapons I hadn't known I'd need. Somewhere in Cherry Creek, my family gathered with spare keys to steal what was mine. They thought I'd return broken manageable too, lost in grief to notice their betrayal. They thought wrong. The taxi exited downtown, and I prepared for war. Sarah Coleman's office occupied the 32nd floor of a gleaming tower, its windows overlooking the entire Front Range. She met me at the elevator, her usual professional composure cracking when she saw my face. Jesus, Susanna. She pulled me into a hug designer suit, be damned. I'm so sorry about Marcus. When did you get back? An hour ago, I said, returning the embrace before pulling back. And I need your help. They're moving tonight. In her corner office, I spread my phone on her desk, showing the accidental group chat. Sarah's expression darkened as she read her manicured nails tapping against the glass surface. The house deed's in my office safe, she said, already pulling files. Your grandmother was smart to insist I keep the original, but this is bigger than just real estate theft. Sit, tell me everything. As I explained the German lawyer's revelations, Sarah's legal pad filled with notes. She asked pointed questions about the mortgage payments, the insurance policy, the shipping company inheritance. Every detail mattered. They've been living off your generosity while planning to rob you. She summarized fury bleeding through her professional tone. Jake's charity work, your parents' mortgage, Emma's nursing school tuition last year. Remember, you paid that. They've taken hundreds of thousands from you over the years while plotting to take more. I need to stop the house sale, I said. That's the immediate threat. We'll do more than stop it. Sarah's smile turned sharp. Colorado law is very clear about fraud and elder financial abuse. Your grandmother's will specified the house would pass to you with your parents as temporary caretakers only. If they've been collecting rent from the guest house without telling you, that's criminal. My head snapped up. What guest house rental? Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard. I noticed payments in their bank records during your grandmother's estate filing. Assumed you knew. $2,000 monthly for the past 5 years. That's $120,000 they owe you. The revelations kept coming like body blows. While I'd been working overtime to help with what I thought were their financial struggles, they'd been stealing from me systematically. We need an emergency injunction. Sarah continued, already drafting documents. I'll file today to freeze any sale attempts. We'll also demand a full accounting of the guest house income. But Susanna, there's something else. She pulled up financial databases cross-referencing names. Your brother's charity, Homes for Heroes. When did he start that? 3 years ago. He was so proud helping homeless veterans find housing. I remembered the launch party, how I'd written the first donation check. Why? Because charities require public financial disclosures. Sarah turned her monitor toward me. Look at these numbers. $2.3 million raised last year. Only $40,000 spent on actual housing. Where's the rest? My stomach dropped as I studied the screen. Administrative costs, $800,000. Marketing, $600,000. Salary for Executive Director Jake Morrison, $350,000. The math painted an ugly picture. He's barely helping anyone, I whispered. Those veterans at his fundraisers, their stories. Window dressing, Sarah confirmed grimly. This is criminal fraud, Susanna. Federal level. If he's been using your family's sob story about almost losing the house to gain sympathy donations while you were secretly paying the mortgage. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Jake's sudden wealth, the new Mercedes, the downtown condo, his insistence on handling the family finances, all funded by exploiting veterans while his sister unknowingly bankrolled his lies. My phone vibrated. Emma again this time, a direct message. Hey sis, hope you're not too jet-lagged. Jake wants to handle Grandma's house stuff so you don't have to worry about it during this tough time. We got your back. The false sympathy made bile rise in my throat. Sarah noticed my expression. Forward me everything, she instructed. Every message, every email, every social media post about the charity or the house. We're building a case that will strip them of everything they've stolen and then some. As I shared files, Sarah made calls. Her voice carried authority that made assistants scramble and clerks expedite. Within an hour, she'd assembled a legal team and scheduled an emergency hearing for the next morning. The injunction will prevent any sale or transfer of the house, she explained. I'm also filing for immediate accounting of all rental income and demanding access to your grandmother's trust records. You mentioned she left a trust for you, supposedly depleted, I said bitterly. Mom told me 2 years ago it was empty bad investments. Sarah's laugh held no humor. Trusts don't just evaporate. We'll subpoena those records too. In the meantime, I suggest you let them think their plan is working. Don't confront them yet. Let them dig their own grave deeper. Exactly. Document everything. If they're bold enough to plan this while you're at your husband's funeral, imagine what else they've done that you don't know about. She handed me a business card. This is Tom Bradley, a private investigator who specializes in financial fraud. Former FBI. He owes me a favor. Call him tonight. The sun set beyond the mountains, painting Denver's skyline in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere across the city, my family gathered at my grandmother's house, dividing up my inheritance like vultures over carrion. There's one more thing, Sarah said as I prepared to leave. The German inheritance and insurance money. We need to move those assets immediately before your family learns about them. I have international banking contacts who can help. I nodded, then paused at her door. Sarah, what kind of person discovers their family has been stealing from them on the same day they return from their husband's funeral? The kind who's been too trusting for too long, she replied gently. The kind whose kindness was seen as weakness. But that woman died in Germany, didn't she? The one standing here now is different. Outside Sarah's building, I stood on the sidewalk breathing Denver's thin air. Rush hour traffic crawled past ordinary people, living ordinary lives, unaware of the war brewing in their midst. My phone showed 17 missed calls from various family members. The evening meeting must have started, and they'd realized I wasn't coming home to an empty apartment after all. Let them wonder. Let them worry. I hailed another taxi this time, heading to a downtown hotel. I couldn't go home yet, couldn't face Marcus's absence while planning my counterattack. I needed a neutral space to think, to plan, to transform fully into whoever I needed to become. As the taxi pulled away, I made my first offensive move. Opening my banking app, I canceled the automatic transfers I'd set up years ago. The monthly help for Emma's student loans canceled. The quarterly gifts for Mom's shopping habits canceled. The emergency credit card I'd given Jake for charity expenses canceled. Then I composed a single text to the main family chat. Jet lag hit hard. Crashing at a hotel tonight. See you all tomorrow. The responses came quickly, feigning concern and understanding. Jake offered to bring me dinner. Mom insisted I should stay with them. Emma sent heart emojis. Performances worthy of Academy Awards if I hadn't seen their true script. In the hotel room, I ordered room service and opened my laptop. The investigator Sarah recommended answered on the second ring, his voice gravelly but alert despite the hour. Ms. Morrison, Sarah Coleman said you'd call. I understand you have a time-sensitive situation. My family is attempting to steal my inheritance while defrauding veterans through a fake charity, I summarized. I need everything you can find by tomorrow morning. His low whistle carried through the phone. That's quite a list. Good thing I love a challenge. Send me what you have. As I forwarded documents, I thought about Marcus again. He'd always encouraged me to see the best in people, especially family. But he'd also kept meticulous records of his secret payments, as if some part of him knew this day might come. Protect yourself, mein Schatz, he'd often said, using his favorite German endearment. Your heart is so big sometimes you forget to guard it. Now sitting alone in a sterile hotel room, I finally understood what he meant. Love didn't require blindness. Trust didn't demand stupidity. And family was about more than shared blood. My phone buzzed with a notification from the investigator. Already found something. Your brother incorporated 3 different charities in 3 states, all with similar names, all funneling to the same accounts. This is bigger than you think. I closed my eyes, feeling the last of my naivety crumble. Tomorrow they'd learn that the woman who'd texted from the airport was gone. In her place stood someone harder, smarter, and far more dangerous. Someone who'd learned that the deepest cuts come from those closest to us. And someone who knew exactly how to cut back. Tom Bradley didn't look like a former FBI agent. Sitting across from me in the hotel restaurant at 7 the next morning, he resembled an accountant more than an investigator with his mild manner and wire-rimmed glasses. But his eyes held the sharpness of someone who'd seen humanity's worst and remained unfazed. Your family has been busy, he said, sliding a thick folder across the table. I worked through the night. What I found, well, let's just say your brother Jake could teach a master class in fraud. I opened the folder, my coffee growing cold as I absorbed the evidence. 3 separate veterans charities in Colorado, Nevada, and Arizona, all with variations of Homes for Heroes in their names. Bank accounts in multiple states, a web of LLCs and shell companies that would make a money launderer proud. The sophistication suggests this isn't his first scheme, Tom continued. I found 2 dissolved charities from 5 years ago, both shut down just before investigations could begin. Your brother's been perfecting this con for a while. What about my parents, Emma? Your parents are more opportunistic than criminal. They've been skimming from your grandmother's trust through management fees they awarded themselves. Technically legal, but ethically bankrupt. Your sister... He paused, adjusting his glasses. She's been actively helping Jake. She's listed as CFO of the Nevada charity. The betrayal cut deeper with each revelation. Emma, who'd cried at my wedding, who'd called Marcus her favorite brother-in-law, had been conspiring against me all along. There's more, Tom warned. The rental income from your grandmother's guest house. They've been hiding it through a property management company Jake owns. They also took out a home equity loan against the house 2 years ago. $150,000. They mortgaged my house. My voice came out strangled. Forged your signature. I have copies of the documents. It's textbook fraud, multiple federal crimes. But here's the interesting part. He pulled out another document. Your grandmother's original trust documents. The real ones, not the edited versions your parents showed you. I read through legalese until I found the number that made me gasp. $3.5 million. Plus growth over 5 years. Should be close to $4 million now. Your parents have been withdrawing the maximum allowed as trustees, while telling you it was depleted. They've stolen approximately $600,000. My phone buzzed. Sarah's name appeared. Get here now. They've accelerated their timeline. Tom drove us to Sarah's office in his unremarkable sedan, weaving through morning traffic, while I processed the magnitude of my family's crimes. This wasn't just greed or opportunism. This was systematic, deliberate theft spanning years. Sarah met us in the lobby, her usually immaculate appearance, slightly frazzled. They filed paperwork to list the house at 8 this morning. Jake knows someone at the assessor's office who expedited it. We need to move now. In her conference room, 3 other lawyers waited with laptops and legal pads. Sarah made quick introductions, her partners specializing in criminal real estate and financial fraud law. Here's our immediate strategy. Sarah began pulling up documents on the wall screen. First, we file the emergency injunction to stop the house sale. Second, we freeze all accounts related to your grandmother's trust. Third, we notify the FBI about the charity fraud. Fourth, we secure your international assets before they discover them. The criminal charges, I asked. Wire fraud mail, fraud identity theft forgery, money laundering, the criminal lawyer listed. Each carries serious federal time. Your brother's looking at 20 years minimum if convicted on all counts. My parents? Breach of fiduciary duty fraud, elder financial abuse. 5 to 10 years. Your sister, similar charges related to the charity scheme. The numbers felt surreal. My family faced decades in prison for their greed. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy, but then I remembered them toasting Jake at dinner while I sat alone in a German funeral home. Ms. Morrison. The financial lawyer spoke up. We need to discuss asset protection. Your husband's estate is substantial, and once your family learns about it, they'll try to claim rights to it. What rights? We were married. I'm his sole beneficiary. Desperate people do desperate things, Sarah interjected. They might claim community property rights, say you owe them money, anything to get their hands on it. We need to move those funds into protected accounts immediately. For 3 hours, we crafted legal documents that would dismantle my family's criminal enterprise. Injunctions, freezing orders, criminal referrals, asset transfers. Each signature felt like drawing a sword. There's one more thing, Tom Bradley said as we wrapped up. I did some digging into your husband's death. The room froze. What do you mean? I asked carefully. Just being thorough. His heart attack happened during a business trip, right? Meeting with lawyers about his grandfather's estate. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Your brother flew to Frankfurt 2 weeks before Marcus died. Used the charity credit card. Want to guess what he was doing there? My blood turned to ice. No. I'm not suggesting murder, Tom clarified quickly. But Jake definitely knew about the inheritance before Marcus died. He met with people claiming to represent American beneficiaries. He was trying to contest the will. Sarah's face went pale. If Jake knew about the inheritance and Marcus died before it could be transferred, it would go to his widow. I finished. And if I was too grief-stricken to handle financial matters, who would my family suggest manage it for me? The full scope of their planning revealed itself like a photograph developing in slow motion. Even if Jake hadn't caused Marcus's death, he'd certainly been prepared to profit from it. We file everything today, Sarah declared. Every charge, every injunction, every freeze order. Tom, can you have your FBI contacts ready? Already called them. They're very interested in the veterans angle. defrauding those who served crosses a line even for financial crimes division. As the lawyers prepared final documents, I excused myself to the bathroom. In the mirror, a stranger stared back. Hollow eyes, pale skin, grief and rage warring for dominance. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to reconcile who I'd been with, who I was becoming. My phone showed 53 missed calls from family members. The house listing must have hit a snag. Their panic was palpable through the digital silence. A text from Jake appeared. "Susanna, where are you? We need to talk about Grandma's house." Some confusion at the assessor's office. Then Mom, "Sweetheart, please call. There's been a misunderstanding about the house paperwork." "Emma, sis, some lawyers are saying weird things. What's going on?" They knew something was wrong, but not how wrong, not yet. I returned to find Sarah on the phone with a judge. "Yes, Your Honor, given the evidence of ongoing fraud and the attempt to sell the property this morning, we believe immediate intervention is necessary." She hung up smiling grimly. "Emergency hearing in 2 hours. Judge Martinez. She doesn't take kindly to inheritance theft." "What do I need to do?" I asked. "Show up, tell the truth, and let us handle the rest. Oh, and you might want to turn off your phone. Once the freeze orders hit their accounts, things will get ugly." Tom Bradley stood to leave, pausing at the door. "Ms. Morrison, I'm sorry for everything you're going through, but if it helps, your husband kept those payment records for a reason. He was protecting you even then." After he left, I sat with Sarah as she made more calls. FBI agents would visit Jake's office that afternoon. Account freezes would begin within hours. By evening, my family's house of cards would be rubble. "You can still back out," Sarah offered quietly. "We could negotiate, maybe avoid criminal charges in exchange for restitution." I thought about Marcus dying alone in Frankfurt while trying to secure our future. I thought about the veterans Jake had cheated, the trust money my parents had stolen, the years of lies I'd swallowed. "No," I said firmly. "They made their choices. Now they can face the consequences." Sarah squeezed my hand. "Then let's go to war." As we gathered our files for court, my phone rang one last time. Jake's girlfriend, Melissa. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Susanna." Her voice sounded strange, frightened. "I'm at Jake's office. There are federal agents here. They're taking computers, boxing up files. What's happening?" "The truth," I replied simply. "Finally, the truth." I hung up and turned off my phone. The battle was joined, and there would be no retreat. In the elevator down to the parking garage, Sarah reviewed our strategy once more. The opening salvo would be the emergency injunction, but that was just the beginning. By the time we were done, every crime would be exposed, every theft repaid, every lie revealed. Justice for Marcus, justice for the veterans, justice for the grandmother whose trust had been violated. And yes, justice for the woman who'd stood alone in an airport, abandoned by those who should have loved her most. The war had begun, and I intended to win. The courthouse elevator was packed with the usual mix of lawyers, clerks, and anxious families. I pressed against the back wall, files clutched to my chest, when a familiar voice pierced through the chatter. Susanna Morrison." A woman near the front turned her press badge, catching the fluorescent light. Christina Walsh, Denver Post investigative reporter, and my high school newspaper co-editor. Time had sharpened her features, trading teenage softness for professional intensity, but her eyes held the same relentless curiosity that had won us state journalism awards. "Christina." I managed as bodies shifted to let her through. "It's been years." 12 years. She confirmed, studying my face with that reporter's gaze that cataloged everything. "I heard about Marcus. I'm so sorry. What brings you to court?" The elevator opened at our floor and we spilled into the hallway. Sarah touched my elbow, nodding toward our courtroom, but Christina's presence felt like providence. "Family matter," I said carefully. "Property dispute." Her eyebrows rose. "Must be serious if Sarah Coleman's representing you. She doesn't take simple property cases." We had 20 minutes before the hearing. 20 minutes that could change everything. I made a decision that would prove pivotal. Coffee, I suggested. The cafeteria is terrible, but we need to talk. Sarah started to protest, but I caught her eye. Trust me, this is important. In a corner booth of the courthouse cafeteria over burnt coffee and stale pastries, I gave Christina the abbreviated version. Her expression evolved from sympathy to interest to barely contained journalistic hunger. Your brother Jake, she interrupted when I mentioned the charity. Jake Morrison, who runs Homes for Heroes. You know it. Christina pulled out her phone, scrolling rapidly. I've been investigating suspicious veterans charities for 6 months. His name keeps surfacing, but I couldn't find solid evidence. Just whispers, complaints that disappeared veterans who suddenly wouldn't talk to me. He paid them off. Or threatened them. These are vulnerable people, many dealing with PTSD addiction issues, desperate for housing. Easy to manipulate, easy to silence. Her voice carried the frustration of stymied investigation. But if you have proof... I glanced at Sarah, who gave a subtle nod. We'd filed the court documents, they were public record now anyway. 3 separate charities, multiple states, shell companies, diverted funds. I listed. My investigator found everything in one night. Christina's fingers flew across her phone screen, taking notes. How much money are we talking about? Millions raised, thousands spent on actual veterans. The rest went to Jake's salary, his condo, his Mercedes, administrative costs that don't exist. Holy shit, she looked up sharply. Sorry, it's fine. That was my reaction too. But Christina, there's more. They've been stealing from me for years. My grandmother's trust, my inheritance, even taking out loans in my name. The reporter in her was fully engaged, now leaning forward with that intensity I remembered from our school newspaper days. This isn't just charity fraud. This is a pattern of family financial abuse. Do you realize how big this story could be? FBI's already at Jake's office, I added. Asset freezes are hitting their accounts as we speak. Christina stood abruptly. I need to make calls. My editor, my photographer, our legal team. Susanna, if even half of this is documented, this story could help dozens of veterans who've been scammed, maybe hundreds. That's why I'm telling you, I admitted. It's not about revenge, it's about stopping them from hurting anyone else. She paused, journalist mask slipping to reveal the friend I'd once known. No, it's definitely also about revenge. And you know what? Good for you. Text me your contact info. After your hearing, we need to sit down properly. I want everything. As she rushed off, Sarah checked her watch. 5 minutes. That was either brilliant or dangerous. Why not both? I replied, finishing the terrible coffee. They wanted to destroy me quietly behind closed doors. Let's see how they handle public scrutiny. The courtroom was smaller than expected, with worn wooden benches and flickering overhead lights. Judge Martinez presided from her bench like an irritated eagle reading through our filed documents with occasional sharp glances over her glasses. Counselor Coleman, she began without preamble. You're alleging fraud, forgery, breach of fiduciary duty, and about 12 other crimes. This is quite the family reunion. Sarah stood smoothly. Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. The respondents have attempted to sell property belonging solely to my client while she was attending her husband's funeral in Germany. They've also systematically drained a trust fund left by my client's grandmother, telling my client it was depleted while withdrawing hundreds of thousands for themselves. I see the account statements, Judge Martinez murmured, flipping pages, and this morning's attempted listing of the Cherry Creek property. Rather aggressive timing, wouldn't you say? The courtroom door burst open. Jake stormed in his usual polished appearance, disheveled tie askew. Mom and Dad followed with Emma trailing behind. Their lawyer, looking harried, apologized to the judge while trying to organize his files. Your Honor. Jake's lawyer began, this is all a misunderstanding. Family miscommunication during a difficult time. Miscommunication. Judge Martinez held up a document. This signature on a home equity loan. Is that supposed to be Ms. Morrison's? We believed we had verbal authorization. to forge her signature interesting legal theory counselor. Jake tried to catch my eye, his expression cycling between anger and desperation. I kept my gaze on the judge, channeling the steel spine Marcus always said I possessed, but rarely showed. Your Honor, Sarah continued, we're requesting immediate injunctive relief to prevent any sale or transfer of the property, freezing of all accounts related to the grandmother's trust, and a full forensic accounting of all transactions involving my client's assets. Judge Martinez studied us over her glasses. Ms. Morrison, do you have anything to add? I stood slowly, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Your Honor, I buried my husband 5 days ago. Instead of grieving, I'm here defending myself against my own family's attempt to steal my inheritance. They've taken my trust, my money, my grandmother's final wishes, and tried to take my home while I was at Marcus's graveside. I just want what's rightfully mine and to ensure they can't do this to anyone else. Mom let out a theatrical sob. Emma reached for tissues. Jake's jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. Their performance might have worked on another judge, but Martinez had seen too many family feuds to be moved by crocodile tears. Motion granted, she declared. All assets in question are frozen pending full investigation. No property transfers, no account access, no disposal of assets. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. She fixed Jake with a stare that could melt steel. Mr. Morrison, I suggest you retain criminal counsel. You're going to need it. This is ridiculous, Jake exploded. She's being vindictive. We're her family. Family doesn't forge signatures, Judge Martinez replied coldly. Family doesn't steal from trust funds, and family certainly doesn't attempt to sell someone's home while they're at their spouse's funeral. Counselor, control your client, or I'll add contempt charges. As Jake's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, my phone buzzed with a text from Christina. Photographer's on his way to Jake's office. FBI's still there. This is front page material. We filed out of the courtroom in tense silence. In the hallway, Jake cornered me, his facade finally cracking completely. You have no idea what you've done, he hissed close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne mixed with fear sweat. The charity has obligations contracts. You're going to ruin everything. No, Jake, I replied calmly. You ruined everything when you decided to steal from veterans, when you decided to steal from me, when you forgot that family means protecting each other, not preying on each other. Don't be so dramatic, Emma interjected her nurse's scrubs, making her look deceptively innocent. We were trying to help you. You're obviously not thinking clearly. Clear enough to catch you all in federal crimes, I countered. By the way, the FBI should be visiting your office too, Emma. Something about being CFO of a fraudulent charity in Nevada. Her face drained of color. Mom clutched Dad's arm, finally understanding this wasn't a family squabble they could smooth over with guilt trips and false tears. Susanna, sweetheart. Mom tried one last manipulation. Think about what you're doing. Think about our reputation, our standing in the community. I am thinking about it, I assured her. Every time a veteran comes forward about being scammed, every time someone Googles our family name, every time you look at yourselves in the mirror and remember that you tried to rob your daughter while she was burying her husband. Sarah touched my arm. We need to go. Tom Bradley's waiting with more information. As we walked away, I heard Jake on his phone voice rising in panic. What do you mean the accounts are frozen? All of them. That's impossible. Outside the courthouse, Denver's noon sun felt cleansing after the fluorescent tomb of legal proceedings. Christina waited by a news van, her photographer already setting up equipment. Still willing to talk? She asked. I thought about the veterans Jake had cheated, the trust money stolen the family who'd betrayed me so thoroughly. Then I thought about Marcus, who'd believed in justice and truth even when it hurt. Everything I promised, on the record, every detail, every document, every crime. As we arranged to meet that afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown German number. I answered cautiously. Frau Morrison. This is Herr Zimmerman. I have urgent news about your husband's estate. It seems someone has been making inquiries suggesting the will might be contested. A Mr. Jake Morrison claims to be representing family interests. My brother's reach extended even to Frankfurt, but he'd moved too late. The war wasn't just joined now, it was spreading across continents. Mr. Zimmerman. I said clearly, Jake Morrison has no authority to represent me or any family interests. In fact, he's currently under federal investigation for fraud. Please document any contact from him and forward it to my attorney. As I hung up, Sarah smiled grimly. He just added international wire fraud to his charges. Your brother really doesn't know when to stop digging, does he? None of them do, I realized. They've been getting away with it for so long they can't imagine consequences. But consequences were coming swift and merciless as an avalanche. The investigation that started with a text from an airport was about to bury them all. And I was just getting started. Christina Walsh's investigative team had commandeered a conference room at the Denver Post, transforming it into what looked like a detective's incident board. Photos of Jake at charity galas covered one wall connected by red string to financial documents, veteran testimonials, and corporate registrations. Two other reporters hunched over laptops while an editor paced behind them, occasionally barking questions. "This is bigger than we thought," Christina announced as Sarah and I entered. "Once word got out about the FBI raid, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Veterans from 3 states want to share their stories." She gestured to a speakerphone where a gravelly voice was recounting his experience. "Promised me a house by Christmas 2023. Showed me pictures, had me speak at fundraisers, used my story for donations. Been sleeping in my car for 6 months now." My throat tightened. While Jake was buying his Mercedes, this man was living in his vehicle. "How many?" I asked quietly. "So far, 43 veterans have contacted us, all with similar stories. Promises made, photos shown, donations collected in their names, then silence." Christina pulled up a spreadsheet. "Based on the numbers, your brother raised over $8 million across all 3 charities. Built exactly 2 houses. Both went to veterans who happened to have attractive young daughters." The implication hung heavy in the air. Sarah's expression darkened further. "We need those veterans' full statements," she said, "for the criminal case and civil suits." Christina nodded to her colleague who was already typing. "We're coordinating with the VA and legitimate veteran organizations. They're furious. Scams like this make it harder for real charities to raise funds." My phone buzzed. "Tom Bradley. At your brother's office, you need to see this." 20 minutes later, we stood in the chaos of Jake's Homes for Heroes headquarters. FBI agents methodically boxed files while forensic accountants dissected hard drives. The walls displayed false triumph. Jake shaking hands with city officials presenting oversized checks, groundbreaking ceremonies for houses that never materialized. Tom led us to Jake's private office, now stripped of its pretense. "Found this hidden behind his diploma," he said, handing over a leather journal. Jake's meticulous handwriting filled pages with cynical calculations. "Veterans are perfect marks." One entry read, "Sympathy factor high, questioning low. Americans love supporting troops but never verify results." Another entry dated 3 months ago. "Susanna still clueless about house rental income. Mom playing grieving trustee perfectly. Estimate another year before questions arise." And then 2 weeks before Marcus's death, "Frankfurt meeting successful. If M dies before inheritance transfers, S inherits. Family can manage if she's too grief-stricken. If M lives, contest will on grounds of mental incompetence." I sank into a chair, the journal trembling in my hands. They'd been planning to declare Marcus mentally incompetent if he lived, or profit from his death if he didn't. "There's more," Tom said gently. "We found correspondence with a German law firm. Jake was trying to prove Marcus abandoned family obligations by moving to America grounds for contesting the will. He hired private investigators to dig up dirt." "Did they find anything?" Sarah asked sharply. "Nothing. Marcus's record was spotless. But the investigator did note Marcus's high stress levels during meetings, his complaints of chest pains." The unspoken possibility hung between us. Had Jake's harassment contributed to Marcus's heart attack, we'd never know for certain, but the timeline was damning. Christina appeared in the doorway, face flushed with urgency. "Susanna, we've got a situation. 3 news trucks just pulled up. Somehow words leaked about the family connection. They want statements." Through the office window, I could see reporters setting up veterans, gathering behind them with handmade signs. "Where's our houses? Stolen valor, stolen homes. Jake Morrison fraud, not hero." Let them wait, I decided. First, I want to meet some of these veterans. Christina made quick calls, and within an hour we'd assembled at a nearby VFW hall. 12 men and women, various ages, united by service and betrayal. Their stories broke my heart in unique ways. Robert Chen, a double amputee who'd given Jake his disability payments as a down payment. He cried when I told him about losing my legs in Kandahar, said I reminded him of his best friend. It was all an act. Maria Santos, who'd lost her apartment while waiting for Jake's promised house. My kids asked why we were living in a shelter when Mr. Morrison said we'd have a home. What could I tell them? William Tucker, Vietnam veteran with severe PTSD. 40 years ago, I fought for this country, came home to people calling me baby killer. Finally thought someone cared, turned out he was the real enemy. Each story added weight to my resolve. Jake hadn't just stolen money, he'd stolen hope from people who'd already sacrificed so much. I'm gonna make this right. I told them, meaning every word. Not just criminal charges, full restitution, real houses. I promise you. With what money? Robert asked, not unkindly, but skeptically. I thought of the 18 million waiting in Germany, of the 4 million in my grandmother's trust, of the assets we'd recover from Jake's theft. Money that should have helped you from the start, I said. My husband would have wanted his inheritance to serve those who served others. We're going to build a real charity with real houses, with real oversight. The room erupted in emotion. Some cried, others cheered. Many simply stared in disbelief that someone was finally taking their pain seriously. Outside the VFW hall, the media circus had grown. Jake's photo splashed across news vans with "Breaking Charity Fraud Scandal" banners. Christina squeezed my hand. Ready for this? I thought of Marcus, of his quiet strength and unwavering integrity. He'd have faced the cameras without flinching, spoken truth, without embellishment. Let's do it, I agreed. The reporters surged forward when we emerged, shouting questions. Christina raised her hand for silence, her press credentials giving her priority. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Susanna Morrison, the whistleblower who exposed the Homes for Heroes fraud. She'll make a brief statement. Then I'll be publishing a full investigation in tomorrow's paper with extensive documentation." I stepped to the microphone's flashbulbs, firing like strobes. In the crowd, I spotted a familiar car, Mom's silver Lexus faces pressed against windows. Let them watch. My brother, Jake Morrison, has spent 3 years pretending to help homeless veterans while stealing millions in donations. I began, voice steady despite internal tremors. He used their stories, their pain, their hope to line his pockets. This ends today. Questions exploded. How long had I known? Was the whole family involved? What about criminal charges? I answered what I could, careful not to compromise the legal cases. Then one reporter asked something that cut through the noise. "Your husband just died. You're fighting your family, exposing massive fraud. Why put yourself through this?" The genuine curiosity in her voice made me pause. Why, indeed, I could have taken my inheritance, moved away, started fresh somewhere my family couldn't reach. Because running would make me complicit. I answered slowly. Every day Jake's fraud continued would be another veteran betrayed. My husband believed in doing what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. This is how I honor his memory. Sarah stepped forward, then adding legal weight to moral clarity. The FBI has assured us additional arrests are imminent. We're coordinating with the IRS state attorneys general in 3 states and the Department of Veterans Affairs. This criminal enterprise ends now. As we fielded questions, my phone vibrated constantly. Family members, family friends, strangers who'd found my number. I ignored them all except one, Emma's husband, Daniel. Susanna, I swear I didn't know. His message read, Emma just told me everything. I'm filing for divorce. I'm so sorry. Another family shattered by greed, another casualty of Jake's schemes. The press conference finally ended when Christina announced her story would include exclusive documents and interviews. Reporters scattered to file their own pieces, already crafting headlines that would destroy my family's reputation forever. In the parking lot, the silver Lexus remained. As I approached my Uber, Mom emerged, mascara streaking her cheeks in black rivers. "How could you?" she wailed. "On the news for everyone to see, you've ruined us." "No, Mom," I corrected quietly. "You ruined yourselves. I just stopped hiding it." "Family doesn't do this to family," she screamed loud enough for lingering reporters to turn. "Family doesn't steal from family," I countered. "Family doesn't abandon family at airports after funerals. Family doesn't forge signatures or drain trust funds or exploit veterans. You stopped being my family the moment you chose greed over love." Dad emerged then, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Susanna, please. We can work this out privately. Call off the lawyers, the press. We'll make restitution." "With what money?" I asked. "The funds you stole from my trust, the equity you illegally borrowed against my house, or were you planning to steal more from other victims?" "You always were too sensitive," Emma spat from the back seat. "Just like with Marcus, making everything dramatic." That snapped something in me. "Don't you dare speak his name. He paid your student loans while you called him that foreign gold digger behind his back. He kept our parents housed while you all planned to rob me blind. He was more family than any of you." A news photographer lingering nearby captured the confrontation. Tomorrow's front page would show my family's real faces twisted with rage and entitlement caught in their own web of lies. "The FBI wants to interview all of you tomorrow," I informed them coolly. "I suggest you bring lawyers, good ones. You're going to need them." As my Uber pulled up, Jake's Mercedes screeched into the lot. He jumped out designer suit, replaced by jeans and a baseball cap, trying to look inconspicuous. The remaining reporters immediately swarmed him. "Mr. Morrison, is it true you stole millions from veterans? How do you respond to 43 victims coming forward? Did you forge your sister's signature on loan documents?" He pushed through them, reaching our family huddle just as I closed the Uber door. Through the window, I watched him gesturing wildly, Mom sobbing harder, Emma and Dad joining what looked like a heated argument about blame and consequences. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Downtown Marriott." I decided. Another night in a hotel, but home still felt too empty without Marcus. As we drove away, I pulled up the photo Christina had shown me earlier. Marcus at our wedding, handsome in his dark suit, smiling at me like I was his whole world. Below it, she'd added a caption for tomorrow's story. "Marcus Morrison, the quiet philanthropist whose death exposed a family's criminal empire." "I did it, my love," I whispered to the photo. "They'll never hurt anyone again." My phone lit up with a message from Herr Zimmerman. "Wire transfer complete. All funds secured in protected accounts. Your husband would be proud." $18 million. More than enough to build real houses for every veteran Jake had cheated. More than enough to ensure my family never recovered from their greed. Justice was coming swift and thorough as Marcus would have wanted. The woman who'd landed in Denver just yesterday was gone, transformed by betrayal into something harder and infinitely more dangerous, a widow with nothing left to lose and everything to set right. Tomorrow, Christina's story would hit newsstands. Tonight, federal agents were preparing additional warrants. And somewhere in Denver, 43 veterans would sleep knowing someone finally fought for them. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned decisively. My family had awakened something they couldn't fight: truth, backed by evidence fury, tempered by justice and the resources to see it through to the bitter end. Dawn painted the Denver skyline in shades of rose and gold as I met Sarah outside my grandmother's Victorian mansion in Cherry Creek. The house stood like a grand dame among newer constructions, its wraparound porch and gingerbread trim maintaining dignity despite years of my family's neglect. Police cruisers flanked Sarah's BMW, their presence both reassuring and surreal. "Ready for this?" Sarah asked, handing me copies of the court orders. "The officers will ensure compliance, but technically we're just documenting what's there." I nodded, key trembling in my hand. I hadn't been inside since Mom had insisted on managing the property 5 years ago. The familiar scent of lavender and old wood hit me as we entered, but something was wrong. The entryway, once graced by my grandmother's collection of Depression glass, stood bare. "They've been selling things," I whispered, running my hand along an empty display shelf. Officer Martinez, a no-nonsense woman with kind eyes, began recording while her partner photographed everything. Room by room, we cataloged the theft. Grandmother's Tiffany lamps gone, the Persian rugs she'd collected during her travels missing. Even the copper pots she'd used to teach me jam-making had vanished. In what had been the library, we found boxes stacked to the ceiling. Sarah opened one, revealing my personal belongings, photo albums from my wedding, Marcus's books, even the quilt my grandmother made for my 16th birthday. "They were systematically erasing you," Sarah observed, photographing the evidence. "Look at this." A spreadsheet lay on the desk, itemizing my possessions with estimated values. Wedding dress designer, $3,000. Photo albums, vintage, $500. German books, first editions, check value. They'd been planning to sell my memories along with my house. A truck rumbled outside. Through the window, I saw Elite Moving Company on its side, Jake's Mercedes parked behind it. The confrontation I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure had arrived. "Stay calm," Sarah advised. "Let them dig themselves deeper." The front door burst open. Jake stormed in first, followed by 2 movers, then my parents and Emma. They froze at the sight of uniforms. "What the hell is this?" Jake demanded. "We have every right to be here." Officer Martinez stepped forward. "Sir, we have a court order preventing any removal of property from these premises. I'll need you to step back." "This is our house," Mom shrieked, clutching a jewelry box I recognized as grandmother's. "We've maintained it for years." "Actually," I said quietly, "it's my house. Has been since grandmother died. You've just been stealing from it." Emma pushed past the movers, her nurse's scrubs making her look deceptively innocent. "Don't be ridiculous, Susanna. We're family. What's yours is ours." "Is that why you were cataloging my wedding dress for sale?" I held up the spreadsheet. "Or why my personal belongings are boxed up like garbage?" Dad, usually the quiet one, found his voice. "You abandoned this place off playing house with that foreigner while we handled everything." "Handled." I laughed, but it came out sharp. "You mean collected rent I never saw, took out loans against it, sold grandmother's antiques." Sarah stepped in all professional ice. "Officers, please note the moving truck and presence of all parties named in the restraining order. Also document that jewelry box Mrs. Morrison is holding. It's listed in the estate inventory as missing." Mom clutched the box tighter. "This was my mother's. I have every right." "Your mother left it to Susanna specifically," Sarah interrupted, producing documents. Along with its contents, a pearl necklace, diamond earrings, and several vintage brooches. Current estimated value, $40,000. "You're not taking Mom's jewelry." Emma lunged forward, but Officer Martinez's partner blocked her path. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down," he said firmly. Jake tried a different approach, his salesman's smile flickering to life. "Susanna, let's discuss this rationally. The movers are already here, costs money to send them back. How about we sit down, work out a fair arrangement?" "Fair." I walked to the boxes containing my life. "Was it fair when you used my social security number for fraud? When you stole from veterans in my name? When you planned to sell my home while I was burying my husband?" His mask slipped. "You always were Daddy's little princess. Had to have everything your way. Well, guess what? The real world doesn't care about your feelings." "No," I agreed. "It cares about evidence like this." I pulled out a folder Sarah had prepared copies of forged signatures, fraudulent loans, stolen rental income, embezzled trust funds. The numbers were staggering, the proof irrefutable. 500,000 from the trust, 120,000 in hidden rental income, 150,000 in fraudulent loans, and that's before we get to your charity scam. I met each of their eyes in turn. The real world cares about prison sentences for all of that. Emma's bravado cracked. "Danny left me," she whispered. "Took the kids, said he couldn't be married to a criminal. Are you happy now?" "Your choices led to that, not mine," I replied, though part of me ached for my nephews. "Just like your choices led to this." The movers, sensing the situation's gravity, began edging toward the door. Jake grabbed one's arm. "I hired you. You work for me." "Not anymore," the man replied, shaking him off. "We don't do illegal moves." As they left, Jake's composure shattered entirely. "You have no idea what you've done. I have obligations, people expecting payment. They'll come after all of us." "Who?" Sarah demanded, recording everything. "Who's expecting payment?" Jake clamped his mouth shut, but fear flickered in his eyes. Officer Martinez made notes while her partner continued photographing. Mom sank onto the stripped living room floor, still clutching grandmother's jewelry box. "How did it come to this? We're family. Family forgives. Family doesn't steal," I countered, exhausted by their refusal to accept responsibility. "Family doesn't betray. Family shows up at the airport when you've just buried your husband." "Still harping on that," Emma snapped. "God, get over yourself." The callousness broke something in me. I walked to a box, pulled out a photo from my wedding, Marcus and me dancing, my family smiling in the background. The contrast between that image and today's reality was devastating. "Look at this." I held it up. "Remember this day you all gave speeches about family bonds, about always being there for each other. Emma, you called Marcus your brother. Mom, you cried happy tears. Dad, you welcomed him to the family. Jake, you were his groomsman." They couldn't meet my eyes. 6 months later, you started stealing from the trust. A year later, you were taking out loans in my name. 2 years later, you were planning to take my house, all while smiling at family dinners, accepting our gifts, letting Marcus secretly pay your bills. "We didn't know about that," Dad protested. "Because you never asked why your mortgage suddenly became manageable. You just assumed Jake was helping, played into the narrative that made you feel good." I set the photo down gently. "Marcus kept every receipt, every transfer record. He knew eventually you'd show your true colors." Sarah's phone buzzed. She stepped away to answer, her expression darkening as she listened. When she returned, her professional mask couldn't hide her shock. "That was the FBI. They've uncovered something significant about Jake's charity. The veterans were just the beginning. He was also embezzling from corporate sponsors, filing false tax returns, and—" She paused, "maintaining connections with international money laundering operations." Jake went pale. "That's not— I didn't—" "They have emails, Jake. Wire transfers to offshore accounts, shell companies in Cyprus and Malta." Sarah's voice was clinical, but I heard the disgust underneath. "You weren't just stealing from veterans. You were helping drug cartels wash money through charitable donations." The room erupted. Mom screamed at Jake. Dad grabbed him by the collar. Emma backed against the wall, phone out, frantically texting. Officer Martinez called for backup, while her partner moved to separate the men. In the chaos, I noticed something, a small key taped under grandmother's desk drawer. My heart racing, I retrieved it, recognizing the number engraved on it. Safety Deposit Box 447 at Wells Fargo, the bank where grandmother had kept her most precious items. Sarah saw me pocket the key but said nothing. We'd investigate later after this disaster was contained. More officers arrived, followed inevitably by news vans. Christina Walsh emerged from one, her photographer already rolling. The family confrontation at the Victorian mansion would make perfect visuals for the evening news. Ms. Morrison. Jake's lawyer appeared breathless and disheveled. "Don't say anything. This is all circumstantial." "Circumstantial?" Sarah laughed harshly. "Your client's looking at RICO charges now. Money laundering for drug cartels through a veterans charity that's life in federal prison." Jake broke free from Dad's grip, desperation making him reckless. He lunged at me, fingers reaching for my throat. "This is your fault if you just played along." Officer Martinez took him down, hard cuffs clicking into place as he writhed on grandmother's hardwood floors. "Jake Morrison, you're under arrest for assault violation of a restraining order and whatever else the FBI wants to add." As they hauled him away, he screamed threats and obscenities that would play poorly on the evening news. Mom sobbed theatrically while Emma live-streamed everything on social media, still trying to control the narrative. "My followers need to know the truth," she declared to her phone. "My sister destroyed our family over money." The irony was lost on her, but not on the thousands of commenters already calling her out. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict swiftly. Dad approached me one last time, looking broken. "Your grandmother would be ashamed," he said quietly. Family was everything to her. "You're right," I agreed. "Which is why she'd be ashamed of you. You turned her house into a crime scene, her trust into a piggy bank, her granddaughter into a victim. She valued family, but she also valued integrity. You have neither." Sarah guided me out as more law enforcement arrived. The house would be sealed for evidence, its contents cataloged, its secrets exposed. But at least it was mine, again wounded, but still standing. In the yard, I paused at grandmother's rose garden, now overgrown and neglected. She taught me to tend these bushes, to cut away the dead growth so new blooms could flourish. "We'll restore it," Sarah promised, understanding without explanation. The house, the garden, all of it. Make it what she intended. As we drove away, I fingered the safety deposit key. Whatever grandmother had hidden, she'd trusted me to find it when the time was right. Today felt like that time. Behind us, news cameras captured my family's complete disgrace. By evening, Jake's arrest would lead every broadcast, complete with footage of him attacking me in our grandmother's home. Mom and Emma's social media meltdowns would go viral. Dad's business partners would distance themselves from the scandal. They'd wanted to erase me from the family narrative. Instead, they'd written themselves out of it entirely, leaving me as the sole author of what came next. The Wells Fargo branch manager met us at 9 sharp the next morning, his usual corporate smile faltering as he recognized me from the news coverage. Everyone in Denver now knew the Morrison family scandal, and Thomas Chen had the unfortunate distinction of being the banker who'd processed some of Jake's fraudulent applications. "Ms. Morrison," he said carefully, "I want to assure you that the bank is fully cooperating with authorities regarding your brother's activities." "I'm not here about Jake," I replied, producing the safety deposit key. "I'm here about box 447. His expression shifted to confusion. "That box? It's been paid up for 20 years in advance. Your grandmother was very specific about access protocols." Sarah leaned forward. "What protocols?" Thomas led us to a private office, typing rapidly on his computer. The box could only be accessed by Susanna Morrison after the death of Patricia Morrison, or, interesting, in the event of family emergency requiring protection of assets. Your grandmother added that clause 3 years ago. 3 years ago, when Jake started his charity, when the stealing began in earnest. Somehow grandmother had known. In the vault's sterile silence, Thomas used his master key alongside mine. The large box slid open, revealing contents that made us all gasp. Stacks of documents, photographs, and at the very top, a sealed envelope addressed to me in grandmother's flowing script. Back in the private office, I opened the letter with trembling hands. "My dearest Susanna, if you're reading this, then my fears have come true, and your family has shown their worst selves. I've watched the signs for years. Jake's easy lies, your mother's greed disguised as concern, your father's weakness, Emma's jealousy of your kind heart. I've prepared evidence they don't know exists. Every Thanksgiving I recorded our dinners. Not for memories, but for proof. They speak freely after wine, forgetting that an old woman might be sharper than she appears. The USB drives contain 8 years of recordings. The documents prove their thefts began long before I died. The photographs, well, Jake wasn't as careful as he thought during his visits to check on me. There's also something else, something I never told anyone, not even you. Your grandfather didn't just leave me the house. He left a second trust, one I kept secret because I knew your parents would devour it like locusts. The account information is enclosed. Fight them, my darling. Not for revenge, but for justice. For every vulnerable person they might hurt next. Your Marcus understood this. We spoke at your wedding. He promised to protect you when I no longer could. Honor his memory by protecting yourself. All my love, grandmother. Sarah grabbed the USB drives while I processed the letter. Thomas excused himself as we began reviewing recordings on Sarah's laptop. What we heard exceeded our worst expectations. Thanksgiving 2018, Jake laughing about bleeding hearts opening their wallets for veterans. They eat up sob stories. Flash a Purple Heart watch donations pour in. Christmas 2019, mom discussing the house. Once mother passes, we sell immediately. Susanna's too sentimental to handle it properly. Easter 2020. Emma drunk on champagne, mocking me. Perfect Susanna with her perfect husband. She'll learn. When life gets hard, we'll be there to help manage her assets. Thanksgiving 2021. The whole family planning my grandmother's funeral while she served pie in the next room. The trust money's almost gone, Dad said. We need to be named executors to access the rest. But the most damning recording came from just 2 months before grandmother died. Jake. The old bat changed her will again. Everything to Susanna. Mom, will contested. Mental incompetence. Emma. Or maybe Susanna has an accident. People grieve differently, make poor choices. Jake. Don't be stupid. We're not murderers, we're opportunists. Big difference. Sarah paused the recording, face pale. They discussed hurting you. That's conspiracy. I couldn't speak. The family I'd loved defended, supported. They'd been plotting against me for years. Grandmother had known and tried to protect me even from beyond the grave. The photographs were equally damning. Grandmother had installed a hidden camera in her study after things started disappearing. Frame by frame, we watched Jake stealing silverware, mom pocketing jewelry, Emma rifling through financial documents. This changes everything, Sarah breathed. This isn't just recent theft. This is a pattern of criminal behavior spanning years. Thomas knocked, looking shaken. Ms. Morrison, I found the second trust account your grandmother mentioned. It's substantial. The number on the screen made me sink into a chair. $15 million. Hidden, protected waiting. Your grandmother was Eleanor Hartley before marriage, Thomas explained. The Hartley Railroad fortune. She lived modestly by choice, but the wealth remained. This account was opened in 1995, accessible only by you, only after her death, only with proper documentation. My family never knew. The account was held under her maiden name at our private banking division. Unless someone knew to look for Eleanor Hartley, not Morrison, they'd never find it. Grandmother had protected me with more than recordings. She'd ensured I'd have resources to fight back, to rebuild, to help others. Combined with Marcus's inheritance, I now controlled over $30 million. We need to move fast, Sarah said, mind already racing. Before your family discovers this, we file additional charges. The recordings prove conspiracy, premeditation, ongoing criminal enterprise. This isn't just fraud anymore. It's organized crime. My phone buzzed. Christina Walsh. You need to see the news now. The bank's television showed Jake being transferred to federal custody, shackled and orange jumpsuited. But that wasn't the shocking part. A reporter was interviewing someone I recognized, Robert Chen, the double amputee veteran. Ms. Morrison called an hour ago. He was saying, tears streaming down his weathered face. Said she's buying me a house. Cash. No strings, no charity bureaucracy, just a home. After 3 years of broken promises, someone's actually helping. Christina appeared on screen next. We've confirmed that Susanna Morrison has already purchased 2 homes for veterans scammed by her brother's charity. Sources indicate she plans to help all 43 victims using her late husband's inheritance to right her family's wrongs. I hadn't told anyone except Robert and Maria the 2 most desperate cases, but word had spread hope traveling faster than light among people who'd forgotten what it felt like. "When did you do this?" Sarah asked softly. "Last night. I couldn't sleep thinking about them in shelters while my family lived in luxury. Marcus's German lawyers worked overnight to arrange the purchases." I met her eyes. It's what he would have done. Thomas cleared his throat. "If you're planning more purchases, we should discuss wealth management strategies. Charitable giving of this magnitude requires proper structure." "Not charity," I corrected. "Justice, restitution. My family stole from them. I'm paying it back with interest." As we prepared to leave with boxes of evidence, my phone rang. The display showed Federal Detention Center. "It's Jake," I told Sarah. "He's calling from jail." "Don't answer." But I did, switching to speaker so she could witness. Jake's voice, stripped of its usual polish, sounded raw and desperate. "Susanna, please, you have to help me. They're talking about 25 to life. Life, I have information you need about Mom and Dad, about Emma. I'll tell you everything if you drop the charges." "I'm not pressing charges, Jake. The federal government is. For money laundering, wire fraud, charity fraud, tax evasion, and about 15 other felonies. You don't understand." His voice cracked. "The people I was working with, the cartels, they'll kill me in prison. Please, I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother when you plotted to hurt me, when you stole from veterans, when you harassed my husband in Germany while his heart was failing." Silence then. "How do you know about Germany?" "I know everything, Jake, including the recordings from grandmother's house. 8 years of evidence. Every cruel word, every criminal plan, every time you laughed about bleeding hearts and easy marks." The silence stretched longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller, defeated. "Everything we built is gone. The charity, the reputation, the money, even Melissa left. Cleared out my accounts first. Is that enough for you? Haven't we suffered enough? Ask the 43 veterans you betrayed if you've suffered enough. Ask the families who donated their last dollars believing you'd help heroes. Ask Marcus, who died knowing you were trying to steal his inheritance." "I didn't kill him." "No, you just made his last weeks miserable with harassment and threats. Tell me, Jake, when you heard he died, was your first thought grief or opportunity?" He hung up without answering, but I knew the truth. They all saw opportunity in my husband's death. The recordings proved it. "You okay?" Sarah asked gently. "Getting there," I admitted. Each revelation hurts less than the last, like building immunity to poison. We left the bank with boxes of evidence that would ensure my family never recovered. But more importantly, we left with resources to build something better. Grandmother and Marcus had both tried to protect me, each in their own way. Now it was my turn to protect others. That afternoon, I sat in my hotel room making lists. 43 veterans needing homes, legitimate charities needing support, a grandmother's house needing restoration, a life needing rebuilding. The news played in the background, my family's disgrace on endless loop. Jake in handcuffs, Mom and Emma's arrests at their homes, Dad's business partners abandoning ship. The Morrison name had become synonymous with greed and betrayal. But it didn't have to stay that way. With $30 million and a clear mission, I could redefine what Morrison meant. Not theft, but restitution. Not betrayal, but justice. Not greed, but generosity. My phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Hope Maria Santos, the veteran who'd lost her apartment. "Ms. Morrison, I just got a call from a real estate agent. She says you bought a house for my family. That can't be right. Things like this don't happen to people like us." "They do now," I promised. "The address is 1427 Oak Street. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, fenced yard for your children. The keys are waiting at the property management office." Her sobs of joy were worth more than any inheritance. This was what money should do: heal wounds, restore hope, rebuild lives. Why? She finally managed. Why would you do this? Because my husband believed in doing what's right. Because my grandmother taught me to cut away dead growth so new blooms could flourish. Because 43 heroes deserve better than broken promises. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began drafting plans for the Marcus Morrison Foundation, not a charity. Those could be corrupted, as Jake had proved. A direct action fund that bought homes, paid off medical debts, provided education. No administrative costs, no fancy galas, no opportunities for theft. Just justice delivered one family at a time. The war against my biological family was nearly won, but the battle to rebuild the Morrison name into something worthy, that was just beginning. The American Legion Post 209 hadn't seen a crowd this size since Memorial Day. 43 veterans and their families filled the main hall, some in wheelchairs, others leaning on canes, all wearing expressions caught between hope and habitual disappointment. I stood at the podium, Christina beside me with her recorder Sarah, at a table with stacks of legal documents. Thank you all for coming. I began, my voice steadier than my hands. I know trust doesn't come easy, especially after what my brother put you through. So I won't ask for trust. I'll just show you action. Robert Chen sat in the front row, still processing the keys he'd received that morning to a fully accessible ranch home in Littleton. Maria Santos clutched her children, the youngest, wearing a shirt that said, "Future Veteran," a heartbreaking reminder of cycles that might continue without intervention. 3 years ago. Robert spoke up without prompting. Jake Morrison looked me in the eyes and promised I'd never sleep in my car again. He took photos with my prosthetics, used my story for fundraising, raised $80,000 in my name. I saw exactly 900 of it. He continued, anger bleeding through. For moving expenses to a home that never existed. Been living in VA parking lots ever since, showering at truck stops, wondering what I did wrong. Maria stood next. He had us speak at galas, rich people crying into champagne while writing checks. My daughter asked if we could move into the hotel ballroom since everyone there seemed so worried about us having homes. One by one, they shared their stories. William Tucker revealed Jake had him sign papers granting temporary power of attorney for housing applications, then used it to open credit cards. Sarah made rapid notes, more federal charges to add to Jake's growing list. He targeted us specifically, said Angela Foster, a Navy veteran with severe PTSD. Knew we were vulnerable, desperate, trained to follow orders and not ask questions. Perfect victims for a con artist in a $1,000 suit. $2,000, I corrected, remembering Jake's bragging. His suits cost $2,000 each. Well, I've been wearing the same jacket for 5 winters, someone called out. The anger in the room was palpable, years of betrayal, crystallizing into rage. But I hadn't come to stoke fury. I'd come to deliver justice. Here's what happens now, I announced, gesturing to Sarah. Every person in this room who was promised housing by Jake's fake charity will receive a home. Not a promise, not an application, not a maybe, a deed, in your name, free and clear. Stunned silence greeted this declaration. Veterans were used to promises, not deliveries. Additionally, I continued, anyone who gave money to Jake's charity will be reimbursed double. If you gave $1,000, you get $2,000. If you took your disability check, you get 2 months back. With what money? William Tucker asked suspiciously. Another charity scam? With money that should have helped you from the start. My husband left me resources to do what's right. My grandmother left me the means to fix what my family broke. I pulled out a bank statement showing the available funds. $30.4 million. Every penny going to make this right. The room exploded. Some cried, others cheered. Many simply stared in disbelief. Angela Foster raised a shaking hand. Why double? Interest and damages. You lost more than money. You lost Faith's security time. I can't give back the nights you spent homeless, but I can ensure you never spend another one. Christina was typing furiously, her photographer capturing every emotion. This would be tomorrow's front page real help for real heroes, funded by Poetic Justice. Sarah began calling names, distributing packets containing property listings. "You choose," she explained. "Each packet has 5 options in your price range. All move-in ready, all in safe neighborhoods, all yours the moment you sign." As veterans approached the table, some moving like they were in a dream, others brought something I hadn't expected: evidence. "Been saving everything," said Marcus Williams, no relation, though the name made my heart clench. Knew someday someone would listen. He produced a battered folder containing every email receipt and false promise from Jake's charity. Others had similar documentation: photos from fundraisers where they'd been paraded like props, contracts for homes that existed only on paper, screenshots of Jake's social media posing with veterans while living in luxury. "We tried reporting him," Robert explained. "But who believes homeless vets over a celebrated philanthropist? Cops said it was civil matter. FBI said gather more evidence. Media said prove it wasn't just sour grapes." "Christina's been investigating for months," I said, nodding to the reporter. "Your evidence plus what we've found will ensure Jake never scams anyone again." "Where is he now?" Maria asked quietly. "Your brother." "Federal detention center. No bail due to flight risk and cartel connections. He's looking at 25 to life if convicted on all charges." "Good," she said flatly. "My kids asked if the bad man who lied about our house was sorry. I told them sorry is what you say when you step on someone's foot, not when you steal their future." As the meeting continued, more truth emerged. Jake hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen dignity. Veterans spoke of the humiliation of being evicted after believing they'd have homes, of explaining to children why Christmas was spent in shelters, despite Mr. Morrison's promises, of other veterans avoiding legitimate charities, assuming all were scams. "He poisoned the well," William said. "Now when real charities reach out, we wonder what the catch is. Trust once broken." He shrugged, the gesture carrying volumes. "Then let's rebuild it," I suggested. "Not through charity, but through direct action. No middlemen, no administrative costs, no galas. Just identifying needs and meeting them." "What about those not here?" Angela asked. "Jake scammed veterans in Nevada and Arizona, too. Christina has their contacts. Every single person he defrauded will be made whole. If we missed anyone, they can reach out through the law firm." I handed out cards with Sarah's information. No statute of limitations on making this right. The formal meeting evolved into something unexpected: community. Veterans who'd been isolated by shame and circumstance began exchanging information. Phone numbers were shared, resources compared, support networks forming organically. "This is what Jake prevented," Robert observed. "Kept us separate so we couldn't compare notes, couldn't organize, couldn't fight back." Christina pulled me aside. "This is incredible, the human interest angle alone. But Susanna, you realize what you're doing. You're essentially admitting your family's guilt, taking responsibility for their crimes." "Someone has to," I replied simply. "They won't, so I will." "Your story's resonating beyond Denver," Christina explained. "Other fake charities are being exposed. Real ones are implementing better oversight. You've started something." But I wasn't interested in starting movements. I was interested in 43 heroes having roofs over their heads by Christmas. Sarah approached with numbers. "Based on housing choices so far, we're looking at approximately $12 million for properties, another $2 million for reimbursements. Well, within budget." "What about furniture, utility deposits, moving costs?" She smiled. "Already factored. Each family gets a $10,000 fresh start fund for necessities." "Make it 15, I decided. They've waited long enough for basic dignity. As the meeting wound down, each veteran stopped to speak with me personally. Some offered thanks. Others shared photos of children who'd have bedrooms for the first time in years. William Tucker, the Vietnam vet who'd been suspicious, gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Your grandmother raised you right," he said quietly. Takes courage to stand against family. Takes more to make their wrongs right. My family made their choices, I replied. Now I'm making mine. The last to leave was Robert Chen. He'd been Jake's first victim, the test case for larger scams. In his wheelchair, he still carried himself with military bearing. Ms. Morrison, I need you to know something. Your brother didn't just steal money. He stole hope. Do you know what that does to a person? To believe just for a moment that someone cares, then realize it was all lies. I thought about airport texts, family dinners built on deception, a husband who died believing family meant something. Yes, I said softly. I know exactly what that does. He studied my face, recognizing a fellow survivor. Then you know why this matters. Not the houses, though God knows we need them, but that someone finally said, I believe you, and backed it up with action. Marcus would have done this immediately, I admitted. He was always the better person. I'm just trying to honor what he'd want. From what I see, Robert said, wheeling toward the door, you're doing him proud. The empty hall echoed with ghosts of promises broken and kept. Christina finished her interviews while Sarah packed up legal documents. Tomorrow, property transfers would begin. By week's end, 43 families would have addresses that no one could take away. You know your family will claim this is admission of guilt, Sarah warned as we left. Their lawyers will argue you're acknowledging responsibility for Jake's crimes. Let them. I have grandmother's recordings, the FBI has Jake's financials, and 43 veterans have the truth. Arguments won't change facts. Outside, Denver's skyline glittered against the darkening sky. Somewhere in federal detention, Jake was discovering that orange jumpsuits and concrete cells were less comfortable than $2,000 suits and downtown condos. Somewhere, Mom and Emma were on house arrest, their social media accounts silent for the first time in years. Somewhere, Dad was learning that business associates flee faster than family when scandal hits. But here, in this moment, 43 veterans were calling loved ones with impossible news they were going home. Not to shelters or cars or friends' couches, but to homes with their names on deeds, bought with money that karma had delivered through unexpected channels. What's next? Christina asked as we parted ways. Grandmother's house needs restoration. The foundation needs establishing. And I need to bury my husband properly now that I can afford the funeral he deserved. She squeezed my shoulder, and your family, they made their choices. I repeated the mantra that kept me moving forward. Now they can live with consequences. As my Uber arrived, my phone lit up with messages. Maria Santos had sent a video of her children dancing in their new living room. Angela Foster shared a photo of house keys with the caption, "First time holding these without fear, they'll be taken away." Robert Chen simply wrote, "Thank you for keeping promises others broke." The driver glanced at me in the mirror. "You're that woman from the news, the one exposing the fake charity." I nodded, too tired for conversation. "My brother's a vet," he continued. "Iraq 2 tours. Says what you're doing gives him hope that civilians actually care. That's rare these days." "Caring isn't rare," I corrected gently. "Acting on it is." He refused to charge me for the ride. Back at the hotel, I found a package waiting. Inside a photo album I didn't recognize. The note was in Tom Bradley's precise handwriting. "Found this hidden in your brother's office. Thought you should have it." The album contained photos from charity events spanning 3 years. Jake shaking hands with veterans he'd later abandon. Mom and Dad at galas basking in reflected glory. Emma posing with families who'd soon be homeless again. But in every photo, carefully circled in red ink, were the veterans themselves. Jake had marked his victims, cataloging their desperation, their gratitude, their gullibility. Notes in margins rated them: perfect mark, disability pays monthly, or too smart, avoid, or desperate enough, proceed. He'd hunted them like prey, these heroes who'd served our country, only to be served betrayal in return. The album was evidence, but also insight into a predator's mind. I closed it feeling sick but strengthened. Tomorrow, more veterans would receive keys, more lies would be exposed, more justice would be served. The war wasn't over, but this battle was won. The Hilton conference room smelled of desperation and expensive perfume, Mom's signature scent applied liberally as if it could mask the stench of scandal. She'd called this emergency family meeting through her lawyer, claiming we needed to present a united front before tomorrow's federal grand jury hearing. What she didn't know was that I'd arrived early, placing a digital recorder in the flower arrangement centerpiece, and Sarah waited in an adjacent room with FBI Special Agent Diana Foster. They filed in like defendants to their own trial. Dad, his usually immaculate appearance crumbling around the edges, stubble-wrinkled shirt defeat in every line. Emma defiant in designer clothes that screamed, "Last shopping spree before asset freeze," her phone clutched like a lifeline to the influence she'd lost. Mom playing the martyred matriarch in funeral black as if mourning the family she'd helped destroy. Jake entered last, flanked by federal marshals. Ankle monitor bulging beneath his tailored pants hands, cuffed in front orange jumpsuit, replaced by a suit that couldn't hide his fall from grace. The marshals positioned themselves by the door as he sat chains clanking against mahogany. "Susanna." Mom began, voice dripping with forced maternal concern. "Thank you for coming. We need to work together to save our family." Our family. I remained standing distance, both physical and emotional. The family that plotted to rob me, that abandoned me at my husband's funeral, that stole from veterans. Which family are we saving exactly? Emma rolled her eyes. Always so dramatic. This victim act is getting old. I pulled out my phone, began recording video openly. "For legal documentation, please continue, Emma. Tell me more about my victim act." Her lawyer whispered urgently, but she shoved him aside. "You destroyed us. My kids won't speak to me. Daniel's filing for full custody. My nursing license is under review. All because you couldn't just let things go." "Let things go." I laughed sharp and bitter. "You mean let you continue stealing? Let Jake keep defrauding veterans? Let Mom and Dad drain grandmother's trust? What exactly should I have let go?" "Family protects family," Dad interjected weakly. "That's what we've always done." "No." I corrected, pulling out grandmother's album of recordings. "Family preys on family. That's what you've always done. Should I play the Thanksgiving recording where you discussed my accident? Or Christmas when you planned to declare grandmother mentally incompetent?" Jake's chains rattled as he leaned forward. "You don't understand what you've done. The people I was involved with, they don't care about FBI protection. They lost millions when the accounts froze. They blame all of us." "Then you should have thought of that before laundering money for drug cartels," I replied evenly. "Before using a veterans charity as a front for international crime." "We didn't know about that," Mom shrieked, mascara already running. "Jake told us it was legitimate. We're victims too." Sarah's voice came through the speaker I'd hidden. "Now would be a good time to mention I'm recording this from next door with FBI oversight. Please continue discussing your victimhood, Mrs. Morrison. The grand jury will find it fascinating." The room erupted. Emma lunged across the table, her lawyer barely restraining her. Dad's face went gray. Mom clutched her chest in a performance worthy of community theater. Jake alone remained still, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. "You wore a wire," he said quietly. "To our family meeting, you actually wore a wire." "Multiple wires," I confirmed. "Audio, video, and federal witnesses. Because this isn't a family meeting, Jake. It's evidence gathering. And you just admitted to involvement with dangerous criminals who might target your family." Agent Foster entered then, all business in her navy suit. "Mr. Morrison, that sounded like a threat assessment we need to discuss. Should your family be placed in protective custody?" "I want immunity," Emma blurted. "Full immunity, and I'll tell you everything. Jake's overseas accounts, Mom's hidden assets, Dad's tax evasion." "Emma," Mom gasped, "you ungrateful—" "Ungrateful." Emma whirled on her. You used me. Said we were protecting family assets, but you were just stealing. I lost my marriage, my kids, my career. For what? So Jake could play millionaire philanthropist. Speaking of hidden assets, I interjected, pulling out bank statements Tom Bradley had uncovered. Mom, care to explain the 3 accounts in the Caymans? Or Dad, should we discuss the shell company receiving kickbacks from your government contracts? Dad's lawyer frantically whispered about Fifth Amendment rights, but the damage was done. They'd walked into this meeting thinking they could manipulate me one more time. Instead, they delivered confessions gift-wrapped for prosecutors. Here's what's going to happen, Agent Foster announced. You'll each be questioned separately. Any attempt to coordinate stories will result in additional charges. Ms. Morrison, she nodded to me, has been exceptionally cooperative. I suggest you all follow her example. Cooperate, Jake's snarled mask finally dropping completely. She destroyed us 30 years building our reputation, our business, our charity. Your criminal enterprise, I corrected, built on lies, theft, and exploitation, funded by stealing from your sister and veterans who served our country. That's the legacy you built, Jake. Own it. He tried to stand, marshals immediately restraining him. When I get out... You won't, Agent Foster interrupted. The grand jury has enough for RICO charges. 25 to life is the plea deal. Trial could mean 50. The number hit like a physical blow. Jake collapsed back, reality finally penetrating his narcissistic shield. 50 years. He'd die in prison. Mom's sobs turned genuine. This can't be happening. We're good people. We go to church. We donate to Jake's fake charity, I suggested. Tax write-offs for funding your own son's criminal enterprise. I'm sure the IRS will find that fascinating. Emma's lawyer was already negotiating with Agent Foster, sensing his client's willingness to flip. Dad sat silent, perhaps finally understanding that decades of enabling hadn't protected him from consequence. Mom continued crying, but no one moved to comfort her. I have a proposal, I announced, knowing Sarah was documenting every word, full confessions, detailed accounts of every theft, every scheme, every crime. Return what assets remain. Cooperate completely with federal authorities. In exchange for, Jake's lawyer asked hopefully. Nothing, I replied. You do it because it's right, because 43 veterans deserve to know exactly how they were betrayed, because the trust fund you stole from was meant for grandmother's favorite charities, because Marcus died thinking he had a family, not a pack of vultures. You want us to confess out of conscience? Emma laughed bitterly. That's rich coming from Miss Perfect, who's taking everything. I'm not taking anything, I corrected. I'm recovering what was stolen and using it to fix what you broke. Every penny goes to veterans you scammed or charities that actually help people. I could have kept it all, disappeared to Europe, lived quietly on millions. Instead, I'm here trying to salvage something good from your greed. Why? Dad asked, the first genuine emotion I'd heard from him. Why not just take the money and run? I thought of Marcus, his quiet integrity and belief in justice, of grandmother documenting crimes while serving pie to criminals, of 43 veterans who'd lost hope until someone kept promises. Because that would make me like you, I answered simply, and I've seen what that looks like. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Emma's lawyer haggled with Agent Foster about immunity terms. Mom demanded her own attorney separate from Dad's. Jake's marshals prepared to return him to detention. Dad signed papers with shaking hands, perhaps finally understanding his role in enabling monsters. As they filed out, each paused at my chair. Emma hissed something about karma. Mom wailed about ungrateful daughters. Dad simply looked broken. But Jake stopped longest, studying me with eyes that finally showed awareness. You know what's funny, he said quietly. I always thought you were the weak one. Too soft, too trusting, too naive. Turns out you were just patient. No, I corrected. I was just honest. You mistook kindness for weakness, integrity for naivety. That's why you're going to prison while I'm going home. Home. He laughed bitterly. What home? You destroyed our family. Wrong again, I said, standing to leave. You destroyed our family. I just stopped letting you hide it. The marshals led him away, chains clanking like ghosts' warnings. Through the conference room windows, I watched them load him into the federal transport van. Mom and Emma argued in the parking lot while Dad sat alone in his car, probably calculating losses. They'd entered as a united front of manipulation. They left as every criminal family does, turning on each other to save themselves. Sarah joined me, Agent Foster beside her. That was masterful, the agent admitted. We've been trying to crack their coordination for weeks. You got them to implode in 30 minutes. They imploded years ago, I observed. Today just made it visible. My phone buzzed with messages. More veterans reaching out, having heard about the housing program. Christina sending article drafts about the meeting. Tom Bradley with updates on recovered assets. The Marcus Morrison Foundation Board requesting guidance on first initiatives. But one message stood out. Marcus's parents in Germany. We saw the news. Marcus would be proud. You are always welcome here. Love Mama and Papa. Real family. The kind that offered support without expectation. Love without manipulation. The kind Marcus had tried to create with me, far from the toxic dynamics that had poisoned my childhood. What now? Sarah asked as we gathered our files. Now we build something better, I decided. 43 houses are just the beginning. Grandmother's recordings will help other families recognize manipulation. The foundation will help veterans Jake couldn't reach. And the Morrison name... I looked back at the conference room where my biological family had finally shown their true faces, recorded in high definition for posterity. The Morrison name will mean something different, something better, something worthy of the people who actually loved me. As we left the hotel, I dropped the flower arrangement with its hidden recorder in the trash. No more secrets. No more hidden microphones. The truth was fully exposed, now ugly and unvarnished, and ultimately liberating. Behind us, my former family scattered to face their individual fates. Ahead, 43 veterans prepared to move into homes bought with laundered money now serving justice. The emergency family meeting had accomplished nothing Mom intended and everything I'd planned. The last gathering of the Morrison family had ended not with unity, but with handcuffs, not with reconciliation, but with recordings for the grand jury. And I felt nothing but relief. The hotel room's television flickered to life at exactly 6 p.m. I sat on the bed's edge, Sarah beside me with her laptop open to social media feeds, both of us bracing for impact. Christina had warned her story would lead the evening news, but nothing prepared me for seeing my family's destruction broadcast in high definition. Breaking tonight. The anchor announced her professional gravity barely containing excitement. A Denver charity fraud case has exploded into an international money laundering scandal. Christina Walsh has the exclusive investigation. Christina appeared on screen standing outside Jake's abandoned offices. Behind her, FBI agents continued carrying boxes of evidence, each one another nail in my brother's coffin. What started as questions about a veterans charity has uncovered a criminal enterprise spanning 3 states and reaching into international drug cartels. She began. At the center, Jake Morrison, who promised homes to homeless veterans while allegedly laundering millions for Mexican drug operations. The report was devastating in its thoroughness. Financial graphics showed money flowing from donors through Jake's charities into offshore accounts. Veteran interviews played in heartbreaking succession. Robert Chen describing nights in his car, Maria Santos explaining to her children why they couldn't have a real address, William Tucker, displaying forged loan documents in his name. Then came the hidden camera footage from this morning's family meeting. Emma screaming about immunity, Mom wailing about reputation, Dad's hollow-eyed defeat, Jake's chained hands gesturing as he admitted cartel connections. The Morrison family thought they were meeting privately to coordinate their defense, Christina's voiceover explained. They didn't know their daughter Susanna was recording everything for federal prosecutors. My phone exploded with notifications, calls, texts, social media tags, the world watching my family implode in real time. I turned it off, focusing on the television as the story deepened. But in an extraordinary turn, Christina continued, Susanna Morrison is using her late husband's inheritance to purchase homes for every veteran her brother defrauded. We spoke with recipients today. The screen shifted to Maria Santos, standing in front of a modest ranch house, keys clutched like prayers answered. My children have their own bedrooms, she said through tears. First time in 3 years. Ms. Morrison didn't just give us a house, she gave us dignity back. More testimonials followed, veterans showing house deeds, families moving furniture, children playing in yards they'd never dreamed of having, each image a stark contrast to Jake's hollow promises. The local report ended, but coverage continued on other channels. CNN had financial experts analyzing the money laundering aspects. Fox focused on veteran exploitation. MSNBC examined charity oversight failures. Each angle revealed new depths to my family's crimes. Then something unexpected happened. The hotel phone rang. The landline, not my cell. Sarah answered cautiously. Ms. Morrison, I have the Denver police chief holding for Susanna Morrison. I took the handset, bewildered. This is Susanna. Ms. Morrison, Chief Patricia Williams. I'm calling because one of my officers just forwarded something concerning. Your mother has posted what appears to be a suicide threat on social media. We're sending units to check on her, but thought you should know. My blood chilled. Sarah pulled up Facebook, finding Mom's profile, her latest post published minutes ago. My daughter has destroyed everything. I have nothing left to live for. Tell Susanna I hope she's happy now. This blood is on her hands. It's manipulation, Sarah said immediately. Classic narcissistic behavior when consequences arrive. But what if it wasn't? What if Mom actually... We have officers at her residence now, Chief Williams reported. She's on the lawn with news cameras claiming you drove her to attempt suicide, very much alive and performing for media. Of course. Mom's final play for sympathy, turning her own threat into theater. The news trucks that had staked out her house were getting exclusive footage of her breakdown, carefully orchestrated for maximum impact. I switched channels, finding live coverage. Mom on her perfectly manicured lawn, wailing to reporters about her heartless daughter who destroyed our family for money. She'd changed into a white nightgown, virginal, victimized, visually perfect for generating sympathy. My daughter wore a wire. She sobbed to the nearest microphone. Recorded her own mother. What kind of child does that? We tried to help her after Marcus died, and she turned on us like a viper. Emma appeared beside her playing supportive daughter. Susanna's always been jealous of our family's success. When her foreign husband died, she snapped, made up terrible lies about Jake's charity work. Now she's spreading these horrible accusations to steal our inheritance. The performance might have worked without context, but Christina's investigation had provided plenty. Comments scrolled beneath the live feed, crocodile tears. Where were you when she buried her husband? Trying to steal from a widow is helping. Then Jake appeared on screen and everything shifted. He wasn't at Mom's house. The breaking news banner screamed, "Live from Federal Detention Center." An enterprising reporter had caught him being transferred between buildings, orange jumpsuit bright in the floodlights. Mr. Morrison, any comment on the money laundering charges? Jake turned to the camera, and for once, his mask completely dropped. You want to comment my sister destroyed us because we didn't pick her up from the airport. One text, and she decided to ruin our lives. She's giving our money to strangers while our family suffers. That's who Susanna Morrison really is. The reporter pressed closer. What about the 43 veterans who say you stole from them? Lies, Jake snarled. Every penny went to administrative costs. Running a charity isn't free. Those vets got what they deserved. Nothing because they contributed nothing. Sarah gasped. He just admitted it, on live television. The feed cut back to the anchor, visibly shaken. We apologize for that disturbing outburst. We're now learning more about the Morrison family's alleged crimes. My phone, despite being off, somehow rang. Sarah checked the ID. It's the FBI. They must really want to talk to you. Agent Foster's voice was urgent. Susanna, we need to move you to a secure location. Jake's mention of cartel connections wasn't exaggerated. We've intercepted communications suggesting they blame you for freezing their money. It's probably just threats, but we can't take chances. You think they'd actually... We don't know. But losing millions tends to upset dangerous people. Pack quickly. Marshals will be there in 20 minutes. The room suddenly felt exposed windows like targets. Sarah immediately began gathering documents while I threw essentials into a bag. The triumph of exposing my family curdled into fear. Had I painted a target on myself? The news continued playing, now showing international coverage. The scandal had spread beyond Denver, beyond America. Charity fraud exposes cartel connections, scrolled across BBC News. German channels covered Marcus's inheritance funding veteran housing. The Morrison name was becoming globally synonymous with greed and betrayal. A knock rattled the door. Sarah and I froze until a voice called, "U.S. Marshals! Agent Foster sent us." 2 marshals escorted us through service corridors to an unmarked van. As we drove through Denver's darkened streets, I watched my phone light up with notifications through the evidence bag they'd sealed it in. The world was reacting to my family's collapse, but I was being hidden from potential revenge. "Where are we going?" I asked the lead marshal. "Safe house outside the city. You'll stay there until we assess the threat level. Agent Foster will brief you in the morning." Sarah squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing. No matter what happens, remember that." Through the van's tinted windows, I glimpsed news trucks racing through the city, chasing new angles of the scandal. Electronic billboards flashed updates about FBI raids and frozen accounts. The Morrison family empire hadn't just fallen. It had detonated, taking chunks of Denver's social landscape with it. We drove for an hour, leaving the city lights for mountain darkness. The safe house was a modest cabin invisible from the main road, staffed by federal agents who treated me with professional kindness. "Your bedroom's upstairs," one explained. "Cable news if you want it, though. Maybe you've seen enough for tonight. Kitchen stocked. We'll be right outside." In the simple bedroom, I finally allowed exhaustion to hit. The television showed split-screen coverage, Mom still performing grief on her lawn, Jake being processed into federal custody, financial experts dissecting the money laundering scheme, veterans moving into their new homes. Christina appeared on one feed looking exhausted but satisfied. This investigation started with a simple question. Why did 43 veterans not have homes despite millions in donations? The answer revealed corruption so deep it reaches from Denver charity galas to Mexican drug cartels. And at the center, one family's greed destroyed everything they claimed to value. The story would run for days, maybe weeks. Every detail of my family's crimes would be examined, analyzed, judged. The Morrison name would become a cautionary tale about charity fraud and family betrayal. But as I lay in an unfamiliar bed protected by federal agents from cartel retaliation, I thought about different images. Maria Santos's children in their new bedrooms, Robert Chen receiving physical therapy in an accessible home, 43 families with addresses no one could steal. My family had chosen greed. I'd chosen justice. The consequences were still unfolding, rippling outward in waves of revelation and retribution. Tomorrow would bring more chaos. Grand jury testimony, security assessments, foundation planning, funeral arrangements for Marcus they could finally afford. Tonight, though, I sat in a strange house hunted by criminals and haunted by family, watching the news break the people who'd broken my trust. The war was won, but victory came with a price I was still calculating. Sleep came eventually filled with dreams of airport arrivals and empty terminals of families that embraced instead of exploited of Marcus, smiling as veterans carried boxes into houses bought with his inheritance. When I woke, it would be to a changed world. The Morrison name meant something different now. Scandal to some, justice to others, warning to all who thought family bonds excused criminal greed. But first, I slept while outside federal agents kept watch, and across the city my family discovered what happened when consequences finally came calling. The news had broken, and with it, every illusion they'd built. The truth was, outspreading like wildfire through digital channels and cable news, burning away years of lies until only ashes remained. And from those ashes, something new could grow. Something honest, something worthy. Something that honored the dead by serving the living one house at a time. Agent Foster's face appeared on the secure video link at 7 the next morning, her expression grave even through digital pixels. I sat at the safe house's kitchen table, coffee growing cold as she delivered news that shifted everything. German authorities raided accounts in Frankfurt, Luxembourg, and Zurich based on our intelligence, she began. Jake wasn't just laundering for Mexican cartels. He was connected to international crime syndicates, Russian oligarchs, Chinese trafficking rings, Middle Eastern terrorist financing. Sarah, who'd stayed overnight, gripped her legal pad. How deep does this go? Deeper than we imagined. Your brother started small, skimming charity funds' basic fraud. But his greed attracted attention from professionals. They saw his veterans' charity as perfect cover for moving dirty money. Sympathetic cause, minimal oversight, emotional donors who didn't ask questions. She pulled up financial charts that made my head spin. Money flowing from Moscow through Denver to Dubai. Charitable donations mixing with drug profits. Jake's signature on documents authorizing transfers that funded human trafficking weapons, smuggling horrors beyond imagination. He knew I asked, though the answer was obvious. He knew enough. Maybe not every detail, but he understood he was facilitating criminal enterprises. The payoffs were too generous for simple money laundering. Your brother earned approximately $12 million in consulting fees over 3 years. $12 million. While veterans slept in cars, while Marcus secretly paid my parents' mortgage, while I worked overtime to help with family bills that didn't exist. There's more, Foster continued. The international nature changes everything. This is now a joint task force operation involving FBI, CIA, DEA, Interpol, and foreign intelligence services. Your family's local fraud scheme has become a matter of national security. My phone returned, but monitored buzzed with a notification from Tom Bradley. Check the news, now. Every channel showed the same breaking story: FBI raids across 3 countries, arrests in 4 languages, frozen accounts totaling hundreds of millions. And at the center, Jake Morrison's face, his charity's logo, transformed from symbol of hope to mark of international crime. The veterans were just props, I said quietly, understanding finally hitting. Jake didn't just steal from them, he used their suffering to wash blood money. Which is why protective custody remains necessary, Foster explained. These aren't local criminals upset about frozen accounts. These are international syndicates who've lost critical infrastructure. They blame your brother primarily, but you're the one who exposed it all. A knock interrupted. Marshal Davidson entered with printed documents. Ms. Morrison, these require immediate attention. Your family is attempting legal maneuvers. The papers revealed desperate strategies. Mom was claiming mental incompetence, arguing she couldn't stand trial due to emotional breakdown. Emma was offering to testify against everyone in exchange for immunity. Dad had hired new lawyers who were floating an insanity defense based on grief-induced psychosis over Jake's arrest. But the most audacious move came from Jake himself. He was claiming I'd orchestrated everything, that I'd known about his activities all along and only exposed them after Marcus died to steal the operation for myself. He's saying I'm the real criminal mastermind. I laughed, but it came out hollow. While I was working 60-hour weeks and living in a rental apartment, desperate people make desperate claims, Sarah noted, already drafting responses. No evidence supports it, but he's trying to muddy the waters for potential jurors. Foster added another complication. The State Department is involved now. Some of Jake's contacts have diplomatic immunity. They're being expelled rather than arrested, but they're also beyond prosecution. Your brother was smart enough to insulate key players. The safe house suddenly felt like a prison. While my family scrambled for legal loopholes and international criminals plotted revenge, I was trapped in protective custody watching the avalanche I'd triggered bury everything in its path. "How long will I need to stay hidden?" I asked. "Until we assess and neutralize threats. Could be weeks, maybe months." "I'm sorry, Susanna. You did the right thing, but right things sometimes have difficult consequences." After Foster signed off, Sarah and I reviewed the growing legal complexities. With international jurisdiction issues, some of Jake's crimes might never be prosecuted. The money trapped in overseas accounts could take years to recover through legal channels. The veterans deserve justice faster than bureaucracy allowed. "We pivot," Sarah decided. "Can't wait for international courts. We use what we have. Your inheritance, the recovered domestic assets, the grandmother's trust. Build the foundation, now help veterans immediately let the government chase foreign money." She was right. Justice delayed was justice denied, especially for people who'd already waited years for help. I pulled up the foundation's planning documents, focusing on immediate action rather than distant legal victories. Tom Bradley called with updates from Denver. "Your mom's performance made national news, but public opinion has turned. Someone leaked the Thanksgiving recordings, the ones where she discussed stealing your inheritance. Hard to claim emotional victim when you're caught planning crimes over turkey dinner." "Who leaked them?" "Emma. She's scorching earth trying to prove cooperation. Released everything. Photos of your parents' Cayman accounts, emails about the house sale, even recordings of Jake bragging about his cartel connections. Family destroying family, just as they'd once conspired together. The criminal enterprise collapsing into cannibalism as each member fought for survival." "There's something else," Tom added. "That safety deposit box key. Your grandmother had another box we missed. This one was registered under her maiden name at a different bank. Want to guess what's inside?" "More evidence." "Better. Bonds. Bearer bonds from the 1960s, never reported, never taxed. Worth approximately $8 million in today's market. Your grandmother was protecting more than recordings. She was building a war chest you could access outside the system. $8 million more. Untraceable, untaxable. If handled correctly, immediate liquidity, while other assets remained frozen in legal battles. Grandmother had thought of everything, planning for contingencies decades in advance. Also," Tom continued, "Christina's story has gone beyond viral. Publishers want books, producers want documentaries, everyone wants exclusive interviews. You could fund the entire veterans program just from media rights." "No." The refusal came instantly. "This isn't entertainment. 43 veterans suffered for years. I won't profit from their pain." "What if they participated, shared their stories, received compensation, could fund programs beyond housing, job training, medical care, education?" He had a point. Controlled narrative, ethical participation resources for comprehensive help. The media attention was inevitable. Better to channel it toward positive outcomes. Another knock interrupted planning. Marshall Davidson entered with a laptop showing news feeds. "Ms. Morrison, you need to see this. Your brother's being transferred to federal court for arraignment. He's making a statement." The live stream showed Jake in shackles, flanked by lawyers and marshals, addressing cameras outside the courthouse. His orange jumpsuit was immaculate, his hair somehow still perfectly styled, his smile managing confidence despite circumstances. "I want to address the veterans I've been falsely accused of defrauding," he began, voice-carrying trained sincerity. "Political prosecutors are twisting charitable work into criminal charges. Yes, the Morrison Foundation had high administrative costs, because excellence requires investment. Every dollar was spent advancing our mission." Reporters shouted questions, but Jake continued his prepared statement. "My sister, in her grief and confusion, has been manipulated by prosecutors seeking headlines. I forgive her betrayal and pray she finds peace. As for these alleged international connections, I was deceived by sophisticated criminals who infiltrated our legitimate charity. I'm a victim, just like the veterans we served. The audacity was breathtaking. Caught with millions in cartel money, he was still playing philanthropist. Sarah threw a pen at the screen in frustration. But then a veteran in the crowd, I recognized William Tucker, pushed forward with his own statement. Jake Morrison promised me a house in 2021, took my disability check as down payment. I've been homeless since. That's not administrative costs. That's theft. Other veterans joined him, a growing chorus of truth against Jake's lies. The cameras turned, capturing real victims, confronting their victimizer. Jake's lawyers hustled him inside, but damage was done. His performance collapsed against authentic testimony. Sir, Marshal Davidson addressed me formally. There's a secure call from Germany, Marcus Morrison's parents. I took the phone with trembling hands. Mama, Papa. Liebchen. Mama Morrison's voice wrapped around me like a blanket. We see the news. This family of yours, they are monsters. But you make Marcus proud. He always said you had hidden strength. I miss him so much. I admitted, tears finally coming. He would have known how to handle this better. No, Papa Morrison interjected firmly. He would have done exactly what you're doing. Help the veterans expose the criminals, honor truth over family lies. This is what he loved about you, the courage to do right when it costs everything. We talked for 20 minutes about Marcus, about justice, about their offer to shelter me in Germany if threats grew worse. Real family offering protection without price, love without manipulation, everything my blood relatives had never been. After hanging up, I found Sarah drafting more documents. The legal avalanche was gaining momentum. International warrants, frozen assets, diplomatic protests, criminal networks unraveling. My simple desire for airport pickup had triggered global investigations. Your family's arraignment is tomorrow, she informed me. You'll testify via video link for security. Are you ready? Ready to face them formally, to speak truth in court, to make their crimes part of permanent record. I thought of Marcus, of grandmother of 43 veterans who'd waited years for someone to believe them. I've been ready since they texted, "Try Uber," I replied. Let's bury them in truth. The afternoon brought more revelations. The IRS announced tax evasion charges, adding decades to potential sentences. The State Department confirmed 5 countries seeking extradition for various financial crimes. The Justice Department upgraded charges to include terrorism financing after finding connections to Middle Eastern extremist groups. Each announcement was another boulder in the avalanche, crushing any hope of my family's recovery. They'd built their criminal empire on the assumption that family loyalty would protect them, that I'd never expose their secrets. Now those secrets were burying them alive, and I was providing prosecutors with detailed maps of every hidden crime. Evening fell over the mountain safe house. Through windows, I watched sunset paint the peaks in shades of justice. Red for the blood money Jake had laundered, gold for the stolen trust funds, purple for the bruises on 43 American dreams. Tomorrow would bring testimony that finalized their destruction. But tonight I sat with Sarah planning housing for veterans, reviewing foundation bylaws, building something clean from the wreckage of corruption. The legal avalanche had started with a single pebble, a text about airport pickup. Now it roared down the mountain, gathering size and speed, crushing everything in its path. And I stood safe above it all, protected by truth, and federal marshals watching the family who'd betrayed me discover what real consequences look like. Justice wasn't just served. It was overwhelming, international, and inescapable. Exactly what they deserved. 3 days into protective custody, I watched through the safe house windows as dawn painted the mountains in shades of amber and rose. The marshal on duty, Agent Stevens, knocked gently before entering with coffee and a grim expression. "Ms. Morrison, there's been a development. Jake attempted to flee. Marshals are moving to intercept him at Denver International Airport. Agent Foster wants you to see this. Says you deserve to witness the end." He set up a laptop showing multiple feeds, security cameras, news helicopters, FBI communications. The same airport where I'd stood alone 2 weeks ago now swarmed with federal agents, all hunting my brother. Jake had made bail through a bondsman who hadn't done proper diligence, not realizing the new terrorism financing charges made him an extreme flight risk. Surveillance showed him entering the airport at 4 a.m. hood, up shoulders hunched, pulling a single carry-on. He'd abandoned his Mercedes in short-term parking, left his phone in a trash can, paid cash for a ticket to Mexico City. "Idiot," Sarah muttered beside me. "Mexico has an extradition treaty. Even if he made it, he'd be arrested within hours." But Jake wasn't thinking clearly anymore. The man who'd once charmed millions from donors was reduced to a desperate fugitive, making amateur mistakes in his panic. Security footage showed him pacing near his gate, checking over his shoulder every few seconds, sweat visible even in grainy resolution. All units suspect approaching gate B44. The FBI communication crackled. "Wait for my signal. Media's already here. This needs to be clean." Through news helicopter footage, I saw the scene unfold. Federal agents positioned throughout the terminal, trying to blend with early morning travelers. News crews setting up discreet positions, tipped off by someone seeking the exclusive. And Jake walking toward his gate freedom, just meters away. Then he spotted them. Something in an agent's posture. A camera lens reflection, simple paranoia. Whatever triggered it, Jake suddenly bolted. He abandoned his luggage, sprinting through the terminal as travelers scattered agents, converging from all directions. "Don't run," I whispered to the screen, knowing he couldn't hear. "Just stop, accept it." But Jake had never accepted consequences. He vaulted over seats, shoved past families, crashed through a restaurant's kitchen. Agents followed, shouting commands he ignored. News cameras captured everything the charity fraudster's final desperate flight broadcast, live to millions. He burst onto the tarmac through an emergency exit, alarms shrieking. Ground crews scattered as Jake ran toward planes, maybe thinking he could somehow board one escape to anywhere but here. Agents surrounded him in a tightening circle, weapons drawn but held low. "Jake Morrison." The lead agent's voice carried over jet engines. "Federal agents, stop running. There's nowhere to go." Jake spun wildly, searching for exits that didn't exist. Behind him, Denver's skyline caught morning sun. The city where he'd built his empire of lies now witnessing its complete collapse. He took 2 more stumbling steps before Agent Foster herself emerged from behind a baggage cart. "It's over, Jake," she said calmly. "You can surrender with dignity or be tackled on live television. Your choice." Jake looked directly at a news camera, and in that moment I saw realization dawn. Not just that escape was impossible, but that everything was truly finished. His charity reputation, freedom future, all destroyed by the same greed that had built them. He dropped to his knees on the concrete, hands behind his head. Agents moved in cuffs, clicking with finality. As they hauled him upright, Jake's mask finally shattered completely. He sobbed. Ugly, genuine tears of someone who'd lost everything and knew exactly who to blame. "This is Susanna's fault," he screamed at the cameras. "My sister destroyed our family over nothing, over a stupid text." They dragged him toward a federal vehicle as reporters pushed closer. "Mr. Morrison, why did you run? Where were you going? What about the veterans you defrauded?" Jake twisted in the agent's grip, designer clothes, disheveled hair, finally imperfect. "Want to know the truth? Those veterans were worthless, broken soldiers looking for handouts. I gave them purpose, being part of something bigger. They should thank me." Agent Foster pushed his head down, forcing him into the car. But Jake managed one last statement. "Everything I did was for family. Susanna's giving our money to strangers. She's the real criminal." The door slammed, cutting off his rant. But damage was done. He'd confessed on live television, admitted viewing veterans as marks rather than heroes. Any jury sympathy evaporated with those words. Sarah switched channels, finding coverage on every network. Charity fraudster captured at airport scrolled beneath footage of Jake's arrest. CNN had financial experts analyzing how he'd hidden millions. Fox interviewed veterans about their reactions. MSNBC examined charity oversight failures. But the most powerful coverage came from Christina Walsh, broadcasting from outside the federal courthouse. Behind her, a crowd had gathered. Veterans holding signs, citizens demanding justice, families who donated to Jake's fraud seeking answers. Jake Morrison's arrest ends a 2-week investigation that exposed not just charity fraud, but international money laundering, terrorism financing, and systematic family corruption, she reported. His capture at the airport, attempting to flee to Mexico with a suitcase full of cash, represents the final collapse of a criminal empire built on exploiting America's heroes. Christina then did something unexpected. She turned to the crowd, finding Robert Chen in his wheelchair among the veterans. "Mr. Chen, you were Jake Morrison's first victim. What's your response to his arrest?" Robert rolled forward, speaking clearly into the microphone. 3 years ago, that man looked me in the eyes and promised me dignity. Instead, he stole my hope, my money, my trust. Today, his sister gave me keys to a real home. That's justice. Not just his arrest, but her actions to fix what he broke. Other veterans joined Robert, sharing their stories for the cameras. Maria Santos held her daughter, describing nights in their car, while Jake bought luxury suits. William Tucker showed foreclosure notices that arrived while Jake vacationed in Aspen. Each testimony added weight to the charges human faces to financial crimes. Then something extraordinary happened. Someone in the crowd started singing. Quietly at first, then louder as others joined. The national anthem sung by veterans, Jake had betrayed their voices carrying across the plaza. News cameras captured it, all American heroes, honoring their country while their deceiver sat in federal custody. "Look at that," Agent Stevens said softly. "Your brother stole from them, and they respond with patriotism. That's the difference between people like them and people like him." My phone buzzed with a forwarded message from Agent Foster. "Jake's trying to make a deal, offering information about international contacts in exchange for reduced charges. He doesn't understand. With terrorism financing involved, deals are off the table. He's looking at life without parole. Life in prison." My brother would die behind bars, his designer suits replaced by federal uniforms, his charm useless against concrete walls. Part of me felt satisfaction. Most of me just felt empty. This was justice, but it was also tragedy. Lives destroyed by choices that started small and metastasized into cancer. Sarah pulled up social media showing the public reaction. Jake the Snake was trending along with Justice for Veterans and Morrison scandal. His tearful arrest photo had already become a meme, symbolizing privileged criminals facing consequences. Comments ranged from celebration to calls for harsher punishment. But among the vindication were messages that hit harder. Parents sharing how they donated their children's college funds to Jake's charity. Small businesses that gave when they could barely survive. Elderly couples on fixed incomes who believed they were helping heroes. We need to expand the restitution program, I decided. Not just veterans, everyone he defrauded needs to be made whole. That could be thousands of people, Sarah warned. Millions more in payouts. Then we sell everything. The family, homes, cars, jewelry, art. Liquidate it all. Marcus would want his inheritance helping victims, not sitting in banks. She nodded, making notes. "I'll draft the expansion proposal. With seized assets in your funds, we can probably cover everyone who can document donations." The morning progressed with more arrests. Emma, attempting to board a flight to Costa Rica, caught using a fake ID she'd apparently had for years. Mom found hiding in a spa resort, claiming she was there for mental health treatment, while charging the stay to a hidden credit card. Dad, the only one who hadn't run, sitting in his home office surrounded by shredded documents when agents arrived. Each arrest was its own spectacle. Emma fighting agent screaming about persecution, Mom fainting dramatically requiring medical attention that turned out to be performance. Dad's quiet surrender finally accepting what his enabling had wrought. By noon, every Morrison except me was in federal custody. The family that had planned to steal my inheritance over dinner was now eating bologna sandwiches in separate cells, their designer clothes exchanged for identical jumpsuits. Tom Bradley called with asset updates. Jake's condo sold this morning. Cash buyer $3.2 million. His cars are at auction. The art collection he thought we didn't know about worth another $2 million. Your parents' house is listed multiple offers already. Everything goes to victims, I repeated. Every penny. What about you? When this is over, you'll need resources to rebuild your own life. I thought of Marcus, of the life we'd planned, simple and honest. I have what I need. The rest goes to fix what they broke. The afternoon brought Jake's official charging. The prosecutor, a stern woman named Linda Rodriguez, didn't mince words at her press conference. Jake Morrison faces 173 federal charges, including money laundering, wire fraud, terrorism, financing, tax evasion, and racketeering. We're seeking life imprisonment without possibility of parole. 173 charges, each carrying years, some carrying decades. Jake would need multiple lifetimes to serve the sentence he faced. Rodriguez continued, "This case represents the largest charity fraud in Colorado history and one of the most complex international money laundering operations we've dismantled. Mr. Morrison's arrest ends a criminal enterprise that spanned continents and harmed countless victims." She then did something unexpected, acknowledged me. "We also want to recognize Susanna Morrison, who risked everything to expose these crimes. Her courage in standing against her own family saved countless future victims and has led to international criminal networks being dismantled. She represents the best of citizenship, while her family represented the worst." The acknowledgement felt hollow. I hadn't sought recognition, just justice. But if it helped other victims come forward, other families find courage to expose corruption, then perhaps it served a purpose. Evening fell with Jake's perp walk playing on repeat across channels. The golden boy, who'd charmed millions, reduced to a stumbling fugitive, caught at the same airport where he'd abandoned his sister. The imagery was too perfect karma, too poetic for media to resist. But beyond the spectacle, real change was happening. Veterans were moving into homes. Donors were being identified for restitution. International criminals were being arrested. The avalanche I'd triggered was reshaping landscapes far beyond Denver. "Tomorrow's the arraignment," Sarah reminded me. "You testify via video link. Are you prepared to face them?" I looked at the laptop showing Jake's arrest, his tear-streaked face, as he blamed me for consequences he'd earned. My family had chosen crime. I'd chosen truth. Tomorrow, that choice would be carved into legal stone. "I'm ready," I assured her. "Let's finish this." The arrest spectacle was over. Tomorrow, the real reckoning began. The storage unit hadn't been opened in years. Dust motes danced in afternoon light as I turned the key, Sarah beside me with inventory lists. This was Marcus's personal unit, one he'd kept private even from me. The marshals had cleared it for safety, but I insisted on opening it myself. Inside, neat as Marcus always was, sat boxes labeled in his precise handwriting. Important documents, family records. For Susanna, open only if needed. My hands trembled as I opened the last box. Inside, files dating back 5 years each, meticulously organized. Bank statements showing his payments to my parents' mortgage, recordings of family dinners where they'd mocked him, screenshots of Jake's social media bragging about wealth while Marcus quietly paid for the roof over our parents' heads. But it was the letter that broke me. Dated a month before his death, sealed in an envelope marked, "For my love." Mein Schatz? If you're reading this, then something has happened to me and you've discovered what I've been documenting. Please don't be angry that I kept this from you. Your beautiful heart always saw the best in your family, and I couldn't bear to be the one who shattered that illusion. But I knew this day would come. Your brother Jake is involved in dangerous affairs. I recognize the signs from my military intelligence days. Your parents and Emma enable him through greed and willful blindness. They see your kindness as weakness to exploit. I've documented everything not for revenge but for your protection. When they inevitably betray you, and my darling, they will, you'll need evidence to defend yourself. The shipping company inheritance from grandfather is real, but more complex than Herr Zimmermann will initially reveal. There are bearer bonds in Swiss accounts art collections in Vienna, properties across Europe. All told, nearly $40 million awaits you. I never mentioned it because money corrupts, and I loved our simple life. Use it wisely. Help those who cannot help themselves. Build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. And remember, you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and more loved than you can imagine. Until we meet again, Marcus. 40 million. Double what I'd thought. Marcus had protected me even beyond death, ensuring I'd have resources to fight battles he saw coming. There's more, Sarah said gently, holding a file. Look at these dates. The documents showed Jake had been investigating Marcus's background for years, hiring private detectives, searching for leverage. 2 weeks before the Frankfurt trip, Jake had contacted people claiming to be distant relatives, trying to contest the inheritance preemptively. He may have contributed to Marcus's stress. Sarah continued carefully. The harassment, the threats, the constant pressure during an already difficult time. I closed my eyes, seeing Marcus's last video call. He'd looked exhausted, mentioning complications he was handling. I'd assumed it was legal paperwork. Now I knew it was my brother tormenting a dying man for money. We use everything, I decided. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. They don't get to claim ignorance or manipulation. The world sees exactly who they are. The arraignment had been that morning, my family appearing via video from separate facilities. Jake pleaded not guilty to all charges, still maintaining his innocence despite his airport confession. Mom sobbed through her plea, claiming mental incompetence. Emma tried to change lawyers mid-hearing. Dad alone pleaded guilty, accepting responsibility with quiet defeat. Now surrounded by Marcus's evidence, I understood the full scope of their betrayal. This wasn't impulse or opportunity. It was years of planning, decades of greed, a lifetime of seeing me as a resource to exploit. Tom Bradley arrived with more discoveries. The Swiss accounts Marcus mentioned, they're real. Bearer bonds from the 1960s art stolen by Nazis and recovered by his grandfather properties in 7 countries. Your husband was essentially royalty, and he chose to live in a Denver suburb working a normal job. He chose love over money, I said simply, something my family never understood. Speaking of money, Tom continued, the restitution program is fully operational. We've verified 600 donors to Jake's charities, plus the 43 veterans. First payments go out tomorrow. Sarah pulled up the spreadsheet. Average donation was $2,000. With double restitution, that's $4,000 per person. The veterans get more. Full value of promised housing plus damages. Total payout approximately $18 million. Half of Marcus's inheritance going directly to Jake's victims. It felt right, like balance restoring itself. Christina Walsh called then, her voice excited. Susanna, I'm at the Denver Post. We just got a call from the Pulitzer Committee. The investigation is being considered for public service journalism. But more importantly, Congress is holding hearings on charity oversight because of our expose. Real change is happening. Real change. Laws that might prevent future Jake Morrisons from exploiting compassion. It wouldn't resurrect the trust my family destroyed, but it might protect others from similar betrayal. That evening, I sat in the safe house reviewing victim impact statements for the sentencing phase, each one carved deeper. A grandmother who donated her husband's life insurance believing she was honoring his military service. A teenager who'd emptied his college savings to help heroes. A small business that went under after giving beyond their means. But between tragedy were glimpses of hope. Veterans writing about their new homes, donors grateful for restitution families, finding closure through justice. The Morrison name, synonymous with scandal, was slowly being rehabilitated through action. "Ma'am," Marshal Stevens knocked. "There's someone here to see you. Says he's from Germany." My heart leapt, thinking Marcus's parents had flown in. But the man who entered was unfamiliar. Elderly, dignified, carrying a leather portfolio. "Frau Morrison, I am Wilhelm Steinberg, Marcus's great-uncle. I've come regarding the full estate." Full estate, I thought Herr Zimmermann handled everything. Wilhelm smiled sadly. Zimmermann handled what we instructed him to reveal, but Marcus insisted on gradual disclosure, fearing sudden wealth would attract unsavory attention. He was right, wasn't he? The portfolio contained deeds, account numbers, provenance certificates, properties in Berlin, Munich, Zurich, art collections worth more than money, history preserved, culture protected, and at the bottom a photograph Marcus's grandfather with a young boy who looked exactly like my husband. "He loved you very much," Wilhelm said gently, "spoke of you constantly, said you were the only person he'd ever met who loved him for himself, not his name or inheritance. I never knew any of this existed." "Because he never told you. That's how he knew it was real love." Wilhelm stood to leave, then paused. "The family wants you to know. You're welcome in Germany always. Marcus may be gone, but you remain a Steinberg. That means something to us." After he left, I sat stunned by the magnitude of what Marcus had hidden. Not from deception, but from protection. He'd seen how money corrupted my family and chose to shield our love from its poison. Sarah returned from court with trial updates. Jake's lawyer is trying a new strategy, claims you manipulated Marcus into marriage for his inheritance, that this whole thing is an elaborate scheme for foreign money. The accusation was so absurd I actually laughed. I didn't even know he had inheritance until after he died. We lived in a rental, drove used cars, shopped sales. Some gold digger I was. The prosecutor destroyed it in minutes, showed your work history, your modest lifestyle, your genuine grief, then played Jake's recorded conversations about contesting the will before Marcus died. The jury looked disgusted. Justice was coming slow but thorough. Each revelation added weight to the charges. Each document proved premeditation. My family had woven their own noose through years of greed and careful documentation. That night I dreamed of Marcus. Not the exhausted man from our last call, but the vibrant one who'd proposed in our tiny kitchen, offering a modest ring and eternal love. He smiled in the dream, proud of what I was building from ruins. I woke to news that shook even my jaded expectations. The FBI had arrested 16 more people connected to Jake's network. International warrants issued for 30 others. The charity fraud had revealed terrorism financing cells across 3 continents. "Your text about airport pickup may have prevented a major attack," Agent Foster explained via secure call. "The money Jake laundered was funding operations. By exposing him, you've saved lives you'll never know about." Lives saved because my family chose greed over love. The irony was bitter poetry. Tom arrived with final accounting from the Denver estate sales. "Your parents' house sold for $2.8 million. Cars, jewelry, and belongings added another $1 million. Jake's assets totaled nearly $5 million after the condos and collections. Every penny is designated for victims." "What about my grandmother's house?" "Still yours, held separately from family assets, though it needs work after their neglect." I made a decision that felt like coming full circle. The Veterans Program needs headquarters. Grandmother's house becomes the Morrison Foundation. Not for charity, for direct action. Her home helping heroes the way she would have wanted. Sarah smiled. From crime scene to Hope Center, she'd love that transformation. The afternoon brought more restitution work. Checks cut funds, transferred lives, rebuilt dollar by dollar. Each payment notification felt like unwinding my family's damage, though money could never fully restore lost trust. Robert Chen called, voice thick with emotion. The house is perfect, fully accessible near the VA hospital room for my grandkids to visit. You gave me back more than housing. You gave me dignity. One by one, veterans checked in. Families moved in, children played in yards. Hope replaced despair. The homes Jake had promised as lies became truth through his exposure. Evening brought a final revelation. Hidden in Marcus's documents, I found correspondence with a Denver Post reporter from a year ago. He'd been secretly feeding information about Jake's suspicious activities, trying to expose the fraud without destroying me. The reporter, Christina Walsh. He contacted me through encrypted channels. Christina confirmed when I called. Said his brother-in-law was running a suspicious charity, but his wife loved her family too much to see it. He provided tips documents, led me to veterans willing to talk. But I couldn't break the story without concrete proof, which I provided by exposing everything. Your courage gave me the final pieces. Marcus would be so proud. His quiet investigation finally bearing fruit. Even in death, Marcus protected and provided. His love reached beyond the grave through carefully planted seeds of truth, waiting for me to water them with courage I didn't know I possessed. The war chest he'd left wasn't just money. It was evidence, connections, and the power to transform betrayal into benevolence. Tomorrow, more veterans would receive keys. More donors would be made whole. More of my family's damage would be undone through patient restitution. Justice wasn't just punishment for the guilty. It was restoration for the innocent. And with $40 million and an army of truth, I intended to restore everything my family had broken, one life at a time. The foundation was more than charity now. It was redemption purchased with blood money and purified through purpose. Marcus's final gift, the means to turn profound loss into lasting legacy. 6 months after that lonely airport arrival, I stood in my grandmother's restored garden watching something I'd never imagined hope blooming where betrayal once festered. The November air carried the scent of fresh sawdust and paint as contractors put finishing touches on the Morrison Foundation headquarters. Ms. Morrison. A young veteran named David approached holding architectural plans. We've finished converting the main floor to be fully accessible. The therapy rooms are ready for inspection. David had been one of Jake's victims promised housing that never materialized. Now he worked as our construction coordinator, using skills learned in the Army Corps of Engineers to help other veterans. The transformation from victim to leader embodied everything we were building. Inside the house, the crystal chandelier my grandmother had cherished cast rainbows across walls now lined with photos of housed veterans. Her formal dining room had become a conference space where families met with counselors. The parlor she'd used for tea was now an intake office where veterans shared their stories without judgment. 43 housed so far, Sarah reported, joining me in what used to be Jake's favorite sitting room. But word spread. We have applications from 200 more veterans who heard we actually deliver. The Netflix documentary about the scandal had aired last month, bringing national attention and donations. I'd refused to participate beyond a written statement, but Christina's investigation and the veterans' testimonials told the story powerfully. Jake serving his life sentence had apparently thrown a tantrum when it aired in the federal prison. Any word from the others? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Your mother's in minimum security teaching yoga to inmates. She's found religion, apparently. Sends weekly letters begging for forgiveness. Sarah paused. Emma got 15 years but might get out in 10 with good behavior. She's studying for her GED, plans to become a counselor. And my father, still in medium security, keeps to himself, works in the library. His lawyer says he reads books about white-collar crime, trying to understand how he enabled it all. They were serving their time, facing consequences, while I served mine differently, building something worthy from the wreckage they'd created. Robert Chen wheeled through the front door, grinning broadly. Susanna. The van's here with furniture for the latest house. Where do you want us to start? He'd become our outreach coordinator, using his story to help other veterans trust again. The man who'd lived in his car for 3 years now ensured no veteran spent another night without shelter. Start with the children's rooms. I decided, make them perfect. Those kids have waited long enough for real bedrooms. As volunteers unloaded donated furniture, I walked through the house remembering. Here, Jake had stolen silver while grandmother served pie. There, Mom had planned to sell my inheritance while pretending to comfort me. In the study, Emma had rifled through financial documents calculating her take. Now those same rooms hosted hope. Veterans learning computer skills where crimes were plotted. Children doing homework where greed once schemed. Love replacing avarice in every corner. Tom Bradley arrived with monthly reports. The international assets are finally unfrozen. The Swiss bonds alone are worth $12 million. The Austrian properties could be sold or maintained as European recovery centers for veterans. Your choice. Marcus would have wanted them used for good. I decided. Let's explore international programs. American veterans aren't the only ones who need help. Speaking of Marcus, Tom pulled out an envelope. This arrived at my office, from Germany. Inside an invitation printed on expensive paper. Marcus's parents were unveiling a memorial at the University of Munich, the Marcus Morrison Center for Social Justice, funded by the German side of his inheritance. They wanted me to speak at the dedication. Will you go? Sarah asked gently. I traced Marcus's name on the invitation. He spent his last days being harassed by my family while trying to secure our future. Yes, I'll go. He deserves to be honored by someone who actually loved him. Christina burst through the front door, practically vibrating with excitement. Susanna Congress passed the Morrison Act federal oversight for all veterans charities, mandatory transparency, criminal penalties for fraud. Your family's crime literally changed federal law. The Morrison Act, my family name attached to anti-fraud legislation. Jake must be apoplectic in his cell watching his legacy become a cautionary tale carved into legal stone. There's more, Christina continued. The Pulitzer Committee called. We won. The investigation into your family's fraud won the Public Service Award. The ceremony's next month. Awards felt hollow compared to housed veterans, but if recognition brought more attention and resources to the cause, I'd smile for cameras and shake important hands. That afternoon, we held our weekly family meeting, not with blood relatives serving sentences, but with the chosen family born from shared purpose. Veterans, volunteers, and staff gathered in grandmother's living room, sharing progress and challenges. Maria Santos had started a small business with a microloan from the foundation. William Tucker was teaching woodworking to other veterans therapy through creation. Angela Foster had become a counselor, her psychology degree finally useful after years of homelessness. We've housed 100 veterans in 6 months, I announced to applause. But that's just the beginning. The Morrison Foundation isn't about charity. It's about justice. Every home we provide rights a wrong. Every life we rebuild proves that good can come from evil. What about the other victims? Asked a volunteer. The people who donated to Jake's fake charity. Restitution continues. We've repaid 70% so far. By year's end, everyone who lost money to my family's fraud will be made whole. I paused, choosing words carefully. We can't restore their trust, but we can restore their funds. The meeting ended with planning for the holiday season. Thanksgiving dinners for veterans' families, Christmas presents for children who'd spent previous holidays in shelters, New Year's Eve spent in real homes instead of cars or streets. As people dispersed, I remained in the living room where so many crimes had been planned. The hidden camera grandmother had installed was gone, but her presence remained. Every positive change felt like honoring her memory, proving that one generation's wisdom could overcome another's greed. She'd be proud, Sarah said, recognizing my thoughts. You've turned her house into exactly what she'd want, a place of service and truth. That evening, I walked through Cherry Creek past the shops where Mom had spent stolen money, past restaurants where Jake had entertained donors, while veterans went hungry. The neighborhood looked the same, but everything had changed. The Morrison name, once spoken with respect, then with scandal, was slowly earning redemption through action. My phone rang, Marcus's mother calling from Munich. "Liebchen," she said warmly. "We received your acceptance. There's something else. Marcus left letters for you, many letters written over years but never sent. We thought, perhaps you're ready to read them now." Letters from Marcus I'd never seen. Another gift from beyond the grave, more love persisting past death. "Yes," I managed through sudden tears. "I'm ready." After we hung up, I stood in the garden grandmother had taught me to tend. 6 months ago, it was overgrown with neglect. Now it bloomed with new life, pruned of dead growth, thriving through careful attention. The metaphor wasn't subtle, but it was true. My family had been the dead growth choking out healthy possibilities. Cutting them away had been painful but necessary. Now in soil enriched by justice and watered with restitution, something beautiful grew. Veterans had homes, donors had closure, laws had changed. A foundation served where a criminal enterprise once schemed, and somewhere in federal prisons my family faced the consequences of choosing greed over love. Tomorrow would bring more work, more veterans to house more lives to rebuild more of Marcus's vision to fulfill. The Morrison Foundation had momentum now, attracting corporate sponsors and major donors who saw authentic service replacing fraudulent charity. But tonight I sat in my grandmother's kitchen where she'd taught me to bake bread and trust carefully. I pulled out flour and yeast, beginning the patient process of creating something nourishing from simple ingredients. As dough rose, I thought about rebuilding, not just houses or bank accounts, but faith in human goodness. Every veteran housed proved that promises could be kept. Every donation honored showed that trust once broken could be restored through patient action. The bread emerged golden and warm, filling the house with the scent of home. I wrapped a loaf for Robert Chen, another for Maria Santos, more for the volunteers who'd worked late. Grandmother's recipes feeding those who'd hungered for more than food. This was rebuilding daily acts of service, replacing grand gestures of greed. Quiet delivery replacing loud promises. Love for Marcus, for grandmother, for justice itself. Transforming tragedy into triumph, one careful step at a time. The war was won, my family defeated and imprisoned. But the peace that was being built brick by brick, house by house, life by life. And with $40 million and an army of believers, we'd keep building until every veteran Jake had failed was home. Every donor he'd defrauded was repaid. Every lie he'd told was countered with truth. The Morrison name would mean something different by the time we were done. Not fraud, but fidelity. Not theft, but restoration. Not betrayal, but the long, patient work of making broken things whole. Grandmother would be proud. Marcus would be proud. And for the first time in months, I was proud too. 1 year later, I stood in the same spot at Denver International Airport where everything had begun. But this time, I wasn't alone. Robert Chen waited beside me in his wheelchair. Maria Santos held her youngest daughter, and dozens of other veterans filled the arrival area. We were welcoming the latest family to receive housing, a young widow whose husband had died in Afghanistan, left homeless by bureaucracy and false promises. "Flight's landing," Robert announced, checking his phone. "Sarah, you ready with the keys?" Sarah Coleman, now the Foundation's chief legal officer, held up a keychain with a small American flag. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, fully furnished, walking distance to schools. The community pitched in to stock the kitchen and closets. Through the windows, I watched planes arrive and depart, each carrying stories of reunion and abandonment. A year ago, I'd stood here devastated and alone. Now I stood surrounded by chosen family preparing to deliver hope. "There she is," Maria pointed as passengers emerged. Ashley Williams looked exactly like her photo, exhausted, wary, clutching her 2 children like life rafts. Her eyes scanned the crowd with the defensive posture of someone who'd been disappointed too many times. Then she saw our signs, "Welcome home, Williams family," and "Real heroes keep promises." The wariness cracked, replaced by cautious hope. "Mrs. Williams." I stepped forward, extending my hand. "I'm Susanna Morrison. We spoke on the phone. These are some neighbors from your new community." "New community." Her voice barely whispered. "You mean it's real? The house is actually real." "As real as these keys," I said, placing them in her palm. "Would you like to go see it?" The ride to her new home became a mobile celebration. Veterans shared their stories of receiving keys of first nights in real beds of children, finally having yards to play in. Ashley listened with growing wonder, her children peering shyly at their future neighbors. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why would you do this for strangers?" Robert answered before I could. "Because someone made promises they didn't keep. Ms. Morrison's making them right. Every fake promise her brother made, she's turning into truth." We pulled up to the house, a modest ranch with a freshly painted fence and an American flag flying from the porch. Neighbors had gathered on the lawn, including 3 other veteran families we'd housed on this street. They applauded as Ashley emerged from the van, her children hiding behind her legs. "Welcome to the neighborhood," William Tucker called out. He'd become the unofficial block captain, organizing barbecues and support networks. "My grandkids have been asking when they'd have new friends to play with." Ashley's composure finally broke. She sobbed into her hands while her children looked on with concern. Maria Santos knelt beside them, speaking softly about how their mom was crying happy tears, the kind that meant good things were finally happening. "Let's see your rooms," Maria suggested to the kids. "I heard someone made sure you have bunk beds and a reading nook." As the children explored their new home with wonder, Ashley and I sat on the porch steps. The afternoon sun painted Denver's skyline in shades of gold and possibility. "I know what it's like to lose everything," I told her quietly. "My husband died suddenly. My family abandoned me when I needed them most. But from that loss came this, the ability to ensure no veteran suffers what you've suffered." "They told me about your family," Ashley said, "how they stole from veterans, how you exposed them. Weren't you scared?" "Terrified, but fury is stronger than fear when you've seen enough injustice." She looked at the key in her hand, then at her children visible through the window already claiming bedrooms. "I stopped believing in miracles when David died. Stopped believing anyone cared about veterans once they'd served their purpose. This makes me believe again. That's the real crime my family committed," I reflected. "Not just theft. They stole faith in human goodness. Every house we provide, every promise we keep, we're stealing it back." The housewarming party lasted into evening. Neighbors brought casseroles and advice, veterans shared resources and phone numbers. Children ran between yards, already forming friendships. This was what Jake had prevented. Community born from common purpose support systems, strengthening through proximity. As darkness fell, I found myself in the kitchen with Christina Walsh, who'd come to document the 150th housing. Her Pulitzer sat on the Morrison Foundation's mantle, Shared Victory Over Shared Enemies. "You know the documentary won an Emmy also," she mentioned. "They want to do a follow-up focusing on the rebuilding, show how justice can create positive change. As long as it centers the veterans, not me. This isn't my story, it's theirs." "Speaking of your story," Christina pulled out her phone. "Jake gave an interview from prison, claims you orchestrated everything to steal the family fortune. Says he's writing a book about being framed by his vengeful sister." I laughed, surprising myself with genuine mirth. "Let him write. Every publisher will fact-check against court records. 43 veterans' testimonies trump one convict's delusions." Sarah joined us with financial reports. The German properties sold for $18 million. The art collection brought another 15. Combined with ongoing donations, we have enough to house 300 more veterans and expand internationally. 300 more Ashleys, Roberts, Mariahs. 300 more families moving from despair to hope, lies to truth, streets to homes. The math of justice multiplying beyond Jake's wildest schemes. "There's something else," Sarah added carefully. "Your mother's being released next month. Good behavior, completed counseling. She's requested contact. The kitchen fell silent. Through the window, I watched Ashley tucking her children into beds they owned for the first time. My mother had tried to steal my home while I buried my husband. Did redemption stretch that far? She can write, "I decided." I'll read. Whether I respond depends on what accountability looks like after 5 years of good behavior in minimum security. And Emma, same terms. They made choices. Now they can live with consequences and whatever rehabilitation comes from that. But they don't get to waltz back into my life just because they've served time. Tom Bradley arrived with international news. The Marcus Morrison Centers are operational in Berlin, London, and Paris, serving veterans from multiple conflicts using the same model. Direct action, no bureaucracy, promises kept. Your husband's name now means hope on 3 continents. Marcus would have blushed at such recognition, preferring quiet service to public acclaim. But his legacy deserved to be known, his model replicated. His vision expanded beyond what either of us had imagined in our small Denver life. Ms. Morrison. Ashley appeared in the doorway holding a notebook. My kids want to write thank you cards. Who should they address them to? I thought of all the people who'd made this possible. Marcus, whose inheritance funded it. Grandmother, whose recordings exposed it. The prosecutors who'd secured justice. The veterans who'd trusted again despite betrayal. Address them to everyone who believes promises should be kept, I suggested. That's who built your home. As the party wound down, I walked through the neighborhood we'd transformed. 6 houses on this block alone sheltering families. Jake had failed. Porch lights glowing with security that couldn't be stolen. Children sleeping without fear of eviction. Veterans finally receiving what they'd earned through service. My phone buzzed with a notification from the prison email system. Jake had sent another message, probably more vitriol about vengeance and stolen fortunes. I deleted it unread. His words had lost power the moment handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Back at the Foundation headquarters, grandmother's house transformed into mission control for justice, I found my office lamp still burning. On my desk sat the photo from my wedding, Marcus and me dancing, while my family smiled in the background. I'd kept it not from nostalgia, but as reminder even poisonous roots could produce good fruit if properly pruned. The phone rang. Marcus's mother calling from Munich as she did every week. "Liebchen," she greeted warmly. "The news showed your latest family receiving their home. 150, yes. Marcus's friend from the service calculated that's 12,000 people given shelter, if you average families of 4. 12,000 people who won't sleep in cars tonight, I confirmed, though there's thousands more to go. You sound tired. Satisfied tired, I clarified, the kind that comes from work worth doing. We talked about the German centers, about her health, about the weather in Munich. Normal conversation with real family, the kind that called without agenda, loved without price, supported without manipulation. After hanging up, I pulled out the latest letter from Marcus I'd been saving. His parents had given me a box of them, years of thoughts he'd written, but never sent worried about burdening me with his concerns. This one was dated a week before his death. My darling Susanna, your brother visited my hotel again today. He seems to think I'll simply hand over grandfather's fortune if he applies enough pressure. What he doesn't understand is that the money means nothing compared to your happiness. But I worry about you, mein Schatz. Your beautiful faith in family blinds you to their nature. They circle like vultures, waiting for moments of weakness. Promise me, if something happens to me, don't let grief make you vulnerable to their manipulation. You are stronger than you know. Your kindness isn't weakness. It's power they can't understand. Use it wisely. The world needs more people who build rather than destroy, who heal rather than harm. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known his death would trigger their worst impulses. But he'd also known I'd survive it, even thrive beyond it. His faith in my strength had proved more accurate than my family's assumption of weakness. We did it, my love, I whispered to his photo. We built something beautiful from the ashes. The security guard knocked, a veteran we'd hired now protecting the foundation that had housed him. "Ma'am, time to lock up. Want me to wait while you finish?" "I'm done," I decided, gathering my things, just making peace with ghosts. Outside, Denver glittered under winter stars. Somewhere in federal prisons, my family served sentences measured in decades. Somewhere, in warm homes, veterans' children slept safely. Somewhere in heaven, I hoped Marcus and grandmother watched their legacy bloom. The Morrison Foundation would continue growing. More houses, more centers, more promises kept. We'd already changed federal law, international banking regulations, and thousands of lives. The ripples from one airport abandonment had become waves reshaping how America treated its veterans. But tonight I drove home to my small apartment. I'd never moved into anything grand, preferring simplicity to show donors their money went to veterans, not administrative luxury. In my living room sat 2 photos, my wedding and the first veteran family we'd housed. Past and future loss, and hope the full circle of justice delivered. My phone showed one last message from Ashley Williams. "Kids asleep in their own beds. Can't stop crying. Good tears. Thank you for keeping promises others broke." I set the phone aside and made tea in my simple kitchen. Tomorrow would bring more veterans to house, more donations to manage, more of my family's damage to repair. The work would never truly end. There'd always be someone who'd served and suffered, someone who'd been promised help and received only betrayal. But tonight, 150 families slept in homes bought with laundered money, now serving justice. 12,000 people had shelter because greed had been exposed and transformed into generosity. The text from the airport, "Can someone pick me up?" had been answered in ways I'd never imagined, not by the family who'd abandoned me, but by the community that had embraced me, not with a ride from the airport, but with a journey from despair to purpose. I raised my teacup to the empty room, to promises kept, justice served, and love that outlasts death. The Morrison name had been redeemed. Marcus's vision had been realized. Grandmother's wisdom had been vindicated. And I'd been picked up after all, not by blood relatives rushing to the airport, but by the infinite arms of purpose, lifting me from grief to greatness, from abandonment to abundance, from victim to victor. The war was over, the peace was prospering, and the true homecoming. It happened every time a veteran turned a key in their own door, every time a child ran through their own yard, every time a promise was kept instead of broken. I was home. They were home. We were all finally, beautifully, justly home. As I finish sharing this story with you, I want to ask, have you ever felt abandoned by those who should have loved you most? Have you watched promises crumble and trust shatter? You're not alone. Sometimes the families we're born into fail us, but the families we build through purpose and shared values can heal wounds we thought would never close. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to hear more about triumph over betrayal, justice over greed, and love that transcends even death. Share this video with someone who needs to know that abandonment isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of discovering your true strength. And if you or someone you know is a veteran facing homelessness, please reach out. The Real Morrison Foundation continues Marcus's legacy because every hero who served deserves to come home. Thank you for listening to my journey from that lonely airport to a community of thousands. Remember, when family fails, you become the family others need. When trust is broken, rebuild it through action. When all seems lost, remember that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the deepest losses. Until next time, this is Susanna Morrison reminding you that promises should be kept, justice should be served, and everyone deserves to be picked up when they fall.